Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Directorial, an AwardsWatch podcast that attempts to get inside the mind of cinema's greatest auteurs, explore what drives them, and maybe we go on a few unrelated tangents along the way. I'm Ryan McQuade, our executive editor here at AwardsWatch, and joining me, as always, is my co-host, Jay Ledbetter.
Ryan, I can't even make a joke about this episode. This is the one. Is this when Malick becomes Malick? Is that kind of what this episode is? The Malick as we know him? Is that what Days of Heaven is? Because that's the movie we're covering today.
Yeah, I think so. I think this is, I mean, I don't know. I mean, like Badlands, we had a pretty big, long conversation about
I think
that
it's one of the great first films in history.
And there's a lot of, there's a lot of foreshadowing to the Malick that we know and are going to talk about. But I think you're right. I think, weirdly enough, this is like a second debut, if that makes sense, because like this is, well, that's a movie directed by Terrence Malick, and that's his first movie. But this is Terrence Malick.
Sorry, the old Terrence Malick can't come to the phone right now.
Yeah,
he's dead.
How appropriate with me here.
Jay, before we get into this episode, I got to ask you, coming off the heels, time of recording, the big superhero movie came out. What did you think about using the Days of Heaven true romance music at the beginning of Deadpool Wolverine?
I love when we date an episode like this.
Yes.
Nothing better than when we time
dead serious. I'm dead serious. By the way, our guest today is the one and only, our favorite guest, Sophia Ciminello. But yes, Sophia.
One of the great fallacies of podcasting is that you can't talk until you're introduced. You got to.
Well, I just did anyway. So.
Yeah, she can do whatever she wants. She's basically the third chair of this series, of this show.
That was awesome. I love that.
It was wild. Knowing that we were doing this episode today, there was no way I was not going to bring it up. Does that now get you to want to see a Deadpool movie, Sophia?
It depends which track it is, but what I'll probably do is wait until it's on streaming and just see how it's used.
It's the track, you know. It's the you know, it's
okay.
like it's like the
okay. Well, there's another, like, I think of another piece of music when I think of Days of Heaven, because it's the one they play before every single movie.
Not Days of Heaven. No, it's the Badlands.
Ryan, the one that you're.
Oh, Badlands.
Badlands.
Okay,
sorry, my bad.
I thought you meant.
I got it mixed up. No,
my Badlands.
Yeah, Badlands, True Romance. They have that music.
Got it.
And now Deadpool Wolverine is the one that completes that trilogy.
Okay.
Weirdly
enough.
I'm
glad they didn't touch Days of Heaven. And
no,
that's untainted by the MCU.
That would have been actually kind of wild if they would have, like, in the climax, instead of, what did they use? Like a prayer.
Ennio Morricone did do the score for Deadpool and Wolverine.
Yes.
He came back from the dead.
They just dusted off an old score that it.
Wait, he's dead?
Wait, oh no, Jay, no. Oh yeah. And the movie was actually written by Cormac McCarthy. Oh my god. Yeah, we're here. Long-time
listeners of the show are just cracking up. Right?
First-time listeners are like, "What the hell is this?" Days of Heaven, 1978. I can't believe we're here. And we have Sophia with us. I'm super excited that this, of all the films to select from Terry Malick, this was the one that she wanted to pick. And so, Sophia, I'll just ask you the question I always kind of ask you to start off these series, which is, what's your relationship with our director here, Terrence Malick? And do you like him? I guess I
love him. Yeah, love him.
Oh, okay.
I would say like top 20 all time for me.
Is he one of your guys?
For sure. I think that for me with
top
Terrence
20
Malick,
is very specific.
Well, I mean,
I was thinking about it, and it's like I have my Rushmore. He's not on that. He could be probably top 15.
What's the Rushmore again?
List. I would say Altman, PTA, Kubrick, Sophia Coppola.
Okay,
Sophia on Sophia.
Sophia on Sophia.
Jay, what's yours?
Mine is Malick, Altman, Kubrick, Lynch, probably.
Y'all want to guess mine?
I think yours is
Spike Lee.
Yep.
PTA.
Mm-hmm.
Bay.
Bayhem, baby.
Bayhem.
No.
Miyazaki.
Yeah.
Mm.
And fourth one,
Yeah,
Scorsese.
it's Marty. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Give myself a pat on the back for
But if
that
I had
one.
a fifth one, it would be Altman.
Okay.
That's yeah.
Yeah.
He's a
Altman.
cool guy.
Well,
He's a pretty cool
he's a
guy.
cool guy.
Yeah.
Um, for
But I
Terrence
get
Malick,
Altman
though,
adjacent with PTA,
okay.
so that's fine.
Yeah, there you go. I think with Malick, I'm sorry to get sincere and
No, it's
maybe
okay.
emotional, but I think you have to with Malick. I think he's one of the all-time great American directors. He, for me, is a visual master who stretches the definition of what cinema can be. I think that you can use blanket phrases or cliches to describe his work or themes that you see that are often repeated, like man versus nature, those sorts of things, but somehow they fall short of actually describing what you're witnessing. And his films, I think, always actually stretch outside of those things. For me, his improvisational style, which I'm sure you talked about a little bit on Badlands, but I think is actually more prevalent here in Days of Heaven, only makes these spiritual aspects of his movies seem more divine, seem more beautiful. I feel like that aspect makes them feel like they were created by some sort of divine intervention. And I like that in his films, this is what always hits me and gets me about his movies and really stands out to me here and in The Thin Red Line and in The Tree of Life, I would say in particular, is that the life that you're living on Earth in his movies feels so grand and there is a beauty to it, but it's also very small. And it just, you feel, I think, like when you're watching his movies that you or these characters, these humans in the story, you're just one small part of everything bigger and greater that's happening in the universe. And that's a very profound feeling to have when you're watching cinema. And I think that for Malick, what happens when I watch his films is that you're seeing something that's, he's looking at time and space and people in this through this kind of universal approach, but he's also and often through like looking at them in the past, like through period pieces. But he's using very progressive, very contemporary, forward-thinking filmmaking styles to do so, which clash in a way, but also provide this kind of beautiful marriage right in front of you. And I think that for me, with him, I think about, I'm sorry to do this, you guys, Christopher Nolan's Best Director speech at the Oscars last year.
That's what
When
everybody's saying about Nolan is that he's the new Malick.
I
I mean,
mean,
they're so different, but I love his speech when he said that. I thought it was really, really beautiful how he talked about how film is such a new art form, right? It's compared to things like painting or music, filmmaking is so new, and to get to be a part of that, right? How important that is. And I feel like for Malick, that's something where he has really cemented himself as one of the great filmmakers, but also as someone who is very like painterly and feels like someone who's created a great work of art that yes is a film but also seems to stretch outside of that. So that's how I feel about Malick in general, but I think Days of Heaven, this is my favorite Malick film. It has been for quite a while, I would say. And for me, that's for many reasons, but it's because this is when the Malick that we know really emerges. And I'll save, I think, some of my general feelings for when we dive into specific sections of the film, but I love how biblical it is, but how it's not in your face with it or extremely obvious. I think that you would, when you see something like locusts or you have a plague and it feels very Old Testament like, and you have these images, you expect it to mean one thing, but in the end, it doesn't unfold in the way that you might expect. And I think that's really, really beautiful. And it's the type of film that I think I've watched so many times now, and each time I've seen it, it gets better and better somehow. And it was a 5-star film the first time I watched it. So yeah, I love Days of Heaven. So thank you for having me on to talk about this one.
and that's the episode.
That's it.
Yeah,
We're signing
She
off
she
now.
she did it again.
she did it again.
She's done it.
By the way, I will say that I don't think that Sophia's comparison of at least Oppenheimer's Nolan era is
That
far
is
off from
silly.
no, I
It's
don't
not,
because
that's not what I mean.
no, I don't think it's far off. I mean, like, because I do think that a lot of that
Silly.
movie is about um just the way in which he's looking at no, I'm serious. He's looking at
I mostly
space and
just meant the
time and
speech,
everything.
but
No, but the time, I think if you ask Nolan, Malick's a guy on the mind. I think he's a guy on everyone's mind when they're making visually beautiful, complex movies. Especially when you're trying to make sort of Western adjacent kind of movies, like a
well,
movie like Days
I'm
of
going to go out
Heaven.
on a limb and say that Oppenheimer was not a film found in the edit. I will say
no.
that that is a
Oh,
very
mm,
storyboarded movie.
mm,
But the movie from last year that I actually thought of often when I was watching this, just visually, was Killers of the Flower Moon. There are a lot of visual
yeah.
parallels to that,
The locus
or
and the fire
the
was
Days of
like I
Heaven, the
was thinking about
fire,
that.
even the shot from the wedding in Days of Heaven looks very similar
Yep.
actually to one in Killers of the Flower Moon, and just of course Jack Fisk, who we'll talk about. He
Well,
has his fingerprints all over it.
I was thinking about Gere and how he looks at the wedding off, and I was thinking more along the lines of the I guess is it what like the christening or
Hmm.
the ritual when they had one of their kids, and the way in concern that De Niro's face is off of that from that child of at that
Hmm.
moment. Yeah, and there's something sort of seedy. Obviously in Killers of the Flower Moon, there's a lot of seediness. I think that's in this movie, and it makes it really rich and complex. Jay,
Enough tangents. My goodness. I'm over it with the Malick series. I'm done.
no tangents.
I'm focused. I'm here.
Rigid. Hmm.
I
No
mean,
improv here on the Malick series. He did
No
that
go on,
for
improv.
us.
go on a few unrelated tangents along the way. It's in the title bit of the show. I don't know if I can let you get away with that. People love the tangents.
Also, our dear narrator in Days of Heaven loves her tangents.
Man, does she love
Loves
a
a tangent.
damn tangent?
This
She's
movie
like,
was very much improvised at a lot of
She
points.
should be, she's a guest already.
Jay, I gotta ask you, you've
Yeah.
been doing all the research. You got
Oh
some
my God.
interesting
Incredible
anecdotes
stuff.
about this movie.
Oh man, I don't even know. I don't even know where to start, to be honest. I mean,
Okay, well
so
then we don't have to go down it. I mean, we can just talk more Deadpool
no, I
Wolverine
mean,
if you want.
look, we love some hypothetical casting. We got plenty of that with this movie. There's some
Yeah.
great stuff. Yeah. But just in general, after Badlands comes out, Malick is like, I'm making a Texas Western. Originally, he said it was going to be set in the 1880s. It ends up being set in what, 1916? But this was his vision all along. You know, he takes a 3-year break from making anything in general because that's just sort of how he operates until he doesn't operate that way and he makes something like every year. But at this point, and you see these stories about him making a movie, and Richard Gere is like he is incomprehensible in real life. But I've certainly met these people who are so smart that they can't really communicate what's going on in their mind. And that to me seems to be sort of how Terrence Malick operates. It's it's remarkable just seeing all the things that went on um, over the course of this film. But this was the film that he wanted to make the entire time. And believe it or not, the script for this film was a lot different than the final product, maybe for the first time in a Terrence Malick movie. Um, and certainly not the last. But you talk about some of the actors that were involved with this production and even in auditions. So during the auditions, one of the casting guys basically got bored and was like, "All right, I'm going to go off script and see if these guys can kind of figure it out." And people who apparently auditioned for the film and could not function with the unexpected improv. Dennis Quaid, Jeff Goldblum, uh, for as Bill, they couldn't figure it out. And after all that was done, Malick was just like, "I want Pacino. Let me have Pacino. Let me get Al Pacino as Bill. He's got some New York energy to him, you know." And then the schedule, Pacino's schedule wasn't working, and so he says, "Let me get Dustin Hoffman. He's got some New York energy." Al Pacino and Dustin Hoffman. I just need thoughts on the hypothetical casting of either of
Well,
those gentlemen.
if Pacino does this, does Gere then do cruising? Do we get that? Because
Well, that'd
freaking
be
wanted
interesting.
that. I mean,
But then if
Yeah.
you get to that point, do we get American Gigolo, right? Or
yeah,
is
because
cruising
it's like,
after American Gigolo? American Gigolo is right after cruising,
let me
maybe?
look it up. Let me look it up.
Look it up. But
I
either way, Dustin Hoffman feels honestly disastrous to me in this
yeah,
role.
I think Al Pacino would have been great.
He could have
I
been
think
good.
he has
Cruising
that
in.
like
I'm sorry.
go
Go
ahead.
no, go ahead, Sophia. Go
Oh,
ahead.
I was just gonna say Al Pacino has that dark Italian beauty that would look so perfect against the golden hour light.
Yeah.
I can see him in the outfit. I
And
could
he
see him
could
with the
play that
sunset.
like sort of dangerous man who's once he gets there and they put their plan in motion and he's observing and you can almost, I don't know, seeing him opposite Sam Shepard would be interesting too.
It's
I don't know,
also
I like it.
so Michael Corleone in the first half of Godfather
Well,
too.
at this point, he's so subtle, is the thing. He's the most
That's
understated
Yeah.
actor.
I know you're kind of also joking, but
No, I'm not. At this time, he is.
you're
Seven Days
honestly
Pacino
right.
The
is
Godfather and The Godfather
Well,
2.
I mean, he also has
I mean,
Dog
Dog Day
Day
Afternoon is
Afternoon,
pretty.
and he has what is it? The you're out of order. This whole trial's out of order. He has a little bit of that going on. A little bit in
he can
Serpico
be
too.
sensitive and menacing, which I
Yeah,
think is key to
he's controlled chaos
some
at
of
this point.
these performances, and I think why
Yeah,
he could have been good.
yeah. By
Yeah,
the
that is
way,
But
true.
I
He
love
had done
Gear.
some. He had done some big stuff.
I do love
America.
Richard Gere
He
though.
was so
Oh,
capable of subtlety
Yes,
mhm.
he's.
as
Well,
well.
I think he still is kind of capable of subtlety. Um, there's there's a good mixture of his is the Irishman, I think, where
Well, yeah,
there's
The
the
Irishman
moments.
was the first understated thing, and also he's huge in that movie at
Yeah, he's
points.
huge.
Yeah,
Well,
he's the charisma bomb of The
Yeah,
Irishman.
he's huge in front of everybody, but then when
Mhm.
it's just him and De Niro, he's
it's a very
When
quiet.
he's sitting on that
nuanced
hotel
movie.
bed, that's
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
tough.
I mean,
it's really tough.
he's great, but and he
Uh,
says it's one of the great regrets of his career that he wasn't in this movie, actually, which
by the
is
way,
which,
Wow.
Jay, American Gigolo and Cruising came out the same year, so he would have had to. He probably
so what
wouldn't
do
have
we
been able to
get?
do it.
What do we
Well,
get?
maybe double erotic thriller. I don't know. I
Well, I'll
mean,
tell you who might have been in it. Malick's potential next choice for Bill, John Lithgow. How about that?
Mm,
Lithgow would have been bad.
John Lithgow
no.
attended Harvard with Malick. He was one of his classmates. And John Lithgow claims that he blew the audition because a dog started humping his leg in the middle of his audition,
Hell
which
yeah.
is very funny. But
Um,
really, the one who was truly going to be in the film. Do either of you know this?
no,
He was
that's what.
gonna be in
Mm-mm.
it, but his television producers blocked him from being in the
Oh,
movie.
yes. John Travolta.
John Travolta was
Hmm.
going to be in this movie. He was
Honestly,
the guy.
I like that too.
that would have worked
I
Yeah.
don't
at
like it
that
as much. I
time.
just think Richard Gere is so freaking good at
No,
this.
It's
Gear's
Richard
good,
Gere's
I
perfect.
think this
like
movie is
Yeah.
such a
we're
masterpiece. It's like I
talking
don't
about
want you
this.
to change anything about
No,
the
but Jay,
movie.
we're talking about if Gear doesn't exist, isn't an option, isn't an actor. You don't take him off.
1970s Travolta is definitely a really
Is a
interesting
very
choice.
it's a very
And
good replacement because he could fit
Yes.
into that world, and I could see him on that train. I could
Hmm.
see him on the back of that train.
yeah,
Yeah.
and Malick wanted Travolta so bad. He told Travolta, "You can have a share of the profits.
Mm.
Like this, you are my
Profits.
guy." And a very funny anecdote that Travolta says, and I have no idea if this is true. John Travolta claims that the studio blocking him from being in Days of Heaven is what made Terrence Malick want to take a break from making movies. That is what Travolta says.
Whoa.
Wait. Whoa, Sandy,
The ego.
calm down there.
No, Travolta says legitimately, he says, I
It's
remember Terrence Malick bawling in front of me and saying, This industry is horrible. I can't believe they would do this to me. Like it's a very explicit,
no,
like this is a thing that happened.
mean,
which is a very funny thing to think
I
about.
also heard
don't
of.
think I believe it.
I mean, I've
Yeah.
also heard that interview with Kevin Costner on Howard Stern recently, where I didn't believe half the shit came out of his mouth. So it's not like,
Yeah. No,
yeah,
look,
these guys are
I don't know that
amateur
I believe
bullshit
that.
artists. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? Like,
but
I mean,
it's a fascinating
you gotta love
possibility. Let's
Travolta
say
being like,
that.
and I'm the reason we didn't get anything till Thin Red Line. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
The
That's
Scientology kicking
that. I
in.
was just gonna
it could
say
be.
that.
It could
That's
be.
whatever's in the Kool-Aid over there. I'll tell you.
But meanwhile, Richard Gere was just kind of sitting there being like, what is going on? I know I'm the fifth choice, but they're keeping me hanging, they're leaving me hanging here. And eventually they ask him, hey, do you really want to be in this movie? And he says, yeah, I really want to be in this movie. And the interesting thing is, Gere had been in a couple of Sam Shepard's plays, and Sam Shepard was the first choice to play the farmer. And Malick just kind of loved his energy and loved his sensibilities and loved some of the stuff that he had written. Shepard had really, this was his first big role in a movie. He was kind of exclusively known as a playwright, and the casting director was like, I got Tommy Lee Jones sitting right here. He sounds like he's from Texas. Let's do that. And Malick is like, no, I want Sam Shepard. He kind of has similar sensibilities to mine. Malick says he liked his shyness. This is one of the last.
Mhm.
This might be the last movie where we actually have some quotes from Malick, which is fun. And I've got some just incredible books with some.
then
with
he
some quotes from
disappeared
him.
into one of the trees he shoots. For God's
Yeah,
sakes.
he went to
I just imagine it.
ethereal plane.
I swear to
Yeah.
God, I think that Terrence Malick lives in the treehouse in Badlands. You know, almost like he built it and
Yeah.
he lives there still and makes those movies. Like, you know
He's
how
a
like
great
there's
mystery. He really is.
he really is. It's like, you know, and then you could go visit that treehouse if you wanted to years later. You know, it's kind of like it's still there, like the
And I think
Popeye
it makes
set.
his movies
You know?
better. I'll be honest. I think
Yeah,
it does.
yeah.
Yeah.
But
I love Richard Gere and Sam Shepard opposite each other. I think it just the dynamic works so well that yeah, I can't really imagine anyone else in those roles. And I feel like Richard Gere too, he talks about when in interviews around this movie how he wasn't really sure he took films and filmmaking seriously compared to theater at the time, even though in the 70s films were doing very adventurous, experimental things. The theater was where to go in his mind if you wanted to do serious acting. And he had some
yeah,
trouble with Malick on set too. I think, like you were saying, Jay, about like him being able to communicate with his actors. I think that's probably especially obvious to actors who are used to the theater where they're getting
Notes
so
and
many
feedback.
specific notes and yeah, feedback about their performances. And Malick just didn't do that. He just basically would tell them to do it again.
Well, theater is a
well,
real
actually,
theater
even
feels
more
like a
interesting
really.
than
Oh,
that.
sorry, Jake. Go ahead.
No. Well, I did look. I'm gonna step over everyone in this series.
No,
It's gonna be great. People are gonna love it.
I was just gonna say real quick, Jay, that I feel like theater is a more communal experience, and filmmaking is at can be, especially when you're dealing with somebody like Terrence Malick. It's very specific. Some people don't want notes, and you know, yeah, it can lead to people not liking you. But it seems like also too, there's a there are people that recurred in Malick's later films too, and so um he's also just
and
a
there are
really
also people that
interesting character.
hate working with him. A
Yeah, and
lot
it's
of
also
people who hate working with
there's
him.
also I mean there's a lot of directors that are geniuses, but they're also a giant pain in the ass, and people don't want to deal with it afterwards. Like
He's not even a pain in the ass, though. He's just so much different than the filmmakers that make big
no, I
movies.
agree, but that's what I'm saying. To those actors, they would consider that to be like, they would get probably more of a collaboration from a Coppola or a Scorsese or other people of his generation, and he's like, nope, I got my vision, we got this, and it's like you're in it. You have to be fully in, I think, Malick's hands, and it's not a two-way conversation, and I can feel that being a frustrating thing. But then you see the film, and it's like we can't really fricking say anything. You
And
know
that's
what I
what
mean?
Richard Gere says about the movie is as annoyed as I was making that movie, it's kind of undeniable. And he considers it one of his best movies. And I'll tell you one kind of fascinating thing that Malick did was he would do one take where they were saying a lot of dialogue. There's not a ton of dialogue in the American film Days of Heaven as
Mhm.
edited. So, but there was a lot more dialogue in the script, and then he would do a take with a lot of dialogue, and then he would do a take where the character on screen would have zero dialogue and react to the dialogue that somebody was saying off screen. And he almost always used the take where the person on screen had no dialogue. And that's probably pretty annoying because these actors, they want not just screen time, but they want to act in the way that they are familiar with acting. But that's what makes Malick different. Is it's not about the person, it's about the person's relationship with nature. It's about the person's relationship with the divine. It's a philosophical exercise in so many ways that I've been reading so many books from people that are a lot smarter than me, breaking down all of the philosophical implications of Terrence Malick's films. And really, you look at this movie, and honestly, a lot of Malick's movies, and Sophia brought it up because, again, she's smarter than me. But it's about this dichotomy between the divine and the worldly, and not just as far as ideas are concerned, but visually, you have this sky against this grain. And I'll talk about how Fisk sort of established these extremes with his design that so encapsulate those ideas. It's about existence. It's about being and not being. It's about the very nature of existing and what that means. Far beyond this, honestly, kind of straightforward narrative. The bones of Days of Heaven are pretty straightforward, but visually, stylistically, it implies a sense of the divine and this metaphysical complexity that very few films captured, especially films at that time. It was Terrence Malick. I think he played with the form a little bit with Badlands, but I think here, partly because he had a producer who had done films like Five Easy Pieces and Easy Rider, who was all about giving the filmmaker total control. It was unfiltered Terrence Malick, and unfiltered Terrence Malick gives you these ideas that you hardly consider possible in the form, and he captures that in this film, and it's an immaculate work. It's I still think it's like his third best movie, but I think it's one of the all-time great masterpieces. So it's the best, except for the other ones.
Yeah.
It's the best to me, but even still, like it would there. I mean, I named The Thin Red Line and Tree of Life. Those are probably my other
Those are
two.
my
I would
three
put in
too,
my
in a different
three.
order. Yeah.
Yeah. I was gonna
I'm
ask
not
you
telling
both.
mine.
I was gonna
You're a
ask
big
you
To the
guys,
Wonder guy.
do
You know me.
you you're just waiting for the new Jesus movie to
Listen,
come out that
Are you
we've all
kidding
been
me? It's
waiting
going to be
for.
incredible.
are you kidding
Can't
me?
wait.
I want that in a freaking IMAX
Hmm.
everywhere across the country. Like, let's
I want
Maybe
to
go.
we'll
see
get
it
it
in
at
a
Cannes.
church.
Yeah.
Oh
Oh,
yeah.
that's oh
Whoa.
wow. All
Wow.
right. Well, I don't want communion midway through or anything, but like, okay. That would, yeah, that's actually
Yeah.
what film festival has a church? I mean, I guess New York, right? Like, does New York have like a setup like that?
No, we don't. I'm thinking though of like I feel like Venice just came to mind as like that would be possible there.
What
Yeah,
about the Vatican Film Festival? Do they have
They're gonna
one?
show Conclave this year.
are
Yeah.
they
Actually,
really?
no.
Yeah, they
Do they
showed
really
they
have
showed
one?
a they showed
No.
Immaculate last year,
Yeah, they shut
and
immaculate.
Benedetta the year before that.
Oh my God, could you
Oh
imagine?
my God.
They would be like, huh,
Benedetta. I
Benedetta at the
love
Vatican.
Benedetta.
It's probably not the
Yeah.
right movie for that crowd.
No.
Uh,
I was gonna ask you guys though, like when you think of your favorite Malick movies, do you think about not do you think about the characters at all, but are they, compared to other films that you like from other directors? I think in Malick, for me, especially in Days of Heaven, I start thinking about this story and about that trio, the love triangle, as it almost feels like this light noir in how it's structured a bit. But then as you pull away from it, you start to realize that the people and the characters are not the center of this world, and that it's so much more about heaven and hell and death and nature and the animals that he's shooting and the way that you feel about the landscapes. And I feel like I never leave this movie thinking about the characters as much as the feeling I get, how evocative the symbols and the nature itself is
I
in the
think he,
movie. I find myself separating it.
I think he's a guy that you think of more about the themes rather than the plot.
Yeah.
And that's definitely the case here. Even if the themes of the movie come from said plot and what that does. I mean, like I agree with you. I mean, like the story, if you just want to go and read a synopsis of it, like off of Wikipedia, if you wanted to, it's like 2 paragraphs. It's very short.
Mhm.
Um, and yes, it's only a 90-minute movie, but how do you take like this really kind of simplistic love triangle and how do you expand it? Well, I mean, you put in these two who are sort of wandering souls, but yet they're connected with love, and then how does that affect when they move out and
And
this
then you put in a bunch of shots of babbling brooks.
yeah. And but I think also too, like there is this idea of a being, he's making this western. Obviously the American dream is definitely on that, and it's such a fascinating choice to actually make this a love triangle, and it is actually very interesting, the relationship dynamics in this movie. Like you're mentioning, Sophia, they're very biblical, and they and I mean everything about Malick's very biblical, but there's so much temptation and jealousy and vitriol and then violence um and sort of, and then what happens with that violence, and that it's very different than Badlands. That's glorifying this, and this is, it's not romanticizing, it's terrifying. When Gere is shot and laying in that water, it's so matter of fact. It feels just very much, it feels normalized, and it feels like everybody just moves on except her.
It's the way of
And
the earth almost. Like
yeah,
it
it's
has
just,
to
it's
come to pass.
evolution. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? It's how
It
the
is so
earth
much the way
spins.
of nature and the way of grace is like
Yeah.
established in this movie.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then it becomes kind of the definitive statement in the Tree of Life. But I will say, Ryan, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but that's my job during this series.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. But the thing that I love so much about Malick, and this is sort of this gets into kind of my personal upbringing and my general philosophy, is just what I love about Malick so much is, yes, there are certainly not tinges, it goes far beyond that, but certainly elements of Christianity in his work. But for me, his work is more spiritual than Christian. And
Hmm.
it's about contemplating the very idea of existence and purpose. And what is amazing is that the only reason Terrence Malick started making movies is because that idea in the world of philosophy was so out of vogue when he was in school. But it was the stuff that he was so interested in. And because of that, we get these films that are challenging the form and talking about things without saying a word that nobody else had ever done. And it's so incredibly thoughtful. And you hear the stories about him making these movies, and you have these Hollywood guys who are used to a more traditional production, and they'll be setting up a shot, it'll be all laid out, the camera's in the perfect position, and they say Malick will see geese flying overhead, and he'll be like, turn your cameras around, we're shooting that now. And somebody in one of the things that I read described it as, the reason he wants to do that is because he knows if we don't capture that now, we'll never capture it.
Hmm.
And that is, I think, explicitly what makes Terrence Malick's movies so magical and divine in a certain way. They transcend earthly art in a way. That sounds incredibly pretentious, but that is how
what
I feel
yeah.
when I watch his movies.
There's
They're
no way to not sound like a complete asshole when you don't talk about these movies. I think sometimes like you sound super snooty, but like it's kind of hard not to because it's all there, and it's
Yeah.
you also don't want to come off as an idiot either when you're talking about these movies. So it's that's the trouble
oh
with
no,
this
I'm coming
series.
off as an idiot for sure.
Well, I mean,
No.
But
no, you this is
Well,
twice now you've done two jokes like that. You don't get any more this
no,
episode.
I truly, as I'm doing the series, I'm like, I need to read everything because I need to understand not just why I love these films. Like I am half reading just to try and articulate why I feel
No, I get that.
the way I do about Terrence Malick's
mhm.
movies, right? Because they are so existential and personal and almost indescribable
Yeah.
that it brings a sense of anxiety to me when I'm talking about them because I don't want to sound like an idiot, but you
No,
can sound
but I also
like a moron talking about it.
but also J2, that's the other thing is like you can read all those books and you wouldn't even probably be able to scratch the surface because that's what's
It's in
so
here.
yeah, it's
That yeah,
like
that really is what it is.
it's
Yeah.
a heart thing, you know. It's
Yeah.
this and Marvel movies right there in the heart. You know what I
Like you
mean?
feel, and it's hard to describe a
It's
feeling.
hard to describe that.
Yeah.
Well, that's like kind of what you were getting at, sort of what I was alluding to in the beginning, which is that I think that improvisational quality makes the divine feel more present in his movies, capturing those things, making them like making those specific geese immortalized in your film, right? Like that's captured in a way that no other director is thinking of doing. And I read this absolutely beautiful line from him that made me tear up when he described like how he shoots and what he wants to capture. And it was a drop of water in the pond, that moment of perfection. And I felt like that perfectly summed up exactly how I feel watching his movies. It's this like very small, crystallized, specific moment that makes you feel, again, like you are both significant and insignificant, and that nature will always like that beauty is what's the most important thing, and how that's like, I don't know, the greatest thing you can witness. And he does that so well in his films.
Also, it's
Yeah.
just so insignificant.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
But to
Mm-hmm.
those
And that is
characters
a
into
That
that
tiny
world,
line
it's
in all of
moment.
his
everything.
films.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's
This
I
movie's
think he's a good
beautiful.
filmmaker.
And he's pretty good. He does a good job. This movie's
Yeah.
beautiful. It's one of the
Oh,
most
I'm
beautiful
getting
movies ever.
tingly talking
beautiful.
about this movie.
I
Did you guys
know.
watch this on the 4K from Criterion?
Yeah, the Criterion 4K
Yeah,
is immaculate. Yeah.
Just, I
it's
mean,
beautiful.
my God, incredible stuff.
Have you guys
Uh,
seen this in theaters before?
I have not.
no,
No.
If it ever comes to your area, it is a transcendent experience to not just see it for the cinematography, but to hear it.
hear it.
That's what I was really surprised by. Like, this is a
That
work
is,
of
yeah.
impeccable sound. Like, it just makes you feel like you are fully immersed in this world, not just Morricone's score, but the sounds of the locus and the water and the wheat, and how much you feel a part of that. And again, I think what's so beautiful about this movie is that the way that it opens, not the photographs, which we can talk about, but when we see Richard Gere, you know, covered in dirt, which is amazing, great, very important person. When he's in Chicago, and it's this, gross kind of industrial
Yeah,
place,
like a
right? We
coal mine.
see,
Like
yeah,
it's
It's
a factory.
defying
Yeah,
nature is what it's
hmm
doing.
because
right? We
it's
see
dark and
that
it's
clash of modernity there. And then when we get out into the openness of nature, and we see that train and the music changes and we get the narration, it feels like it's opening up into the title of Days of Heaven. And then that, of course, sometimes throughout the movie too, what you feel is, did they do you want them to go out there at all? Because it's such a hard life for them. And I think that contrast of extreme work and the beauty and the stillness of nature is really profound when you watch it. And something I notice more and more, like feeling more and more in every watch.
There's certainly this idea of these people from the city, which is exist in defiance of the natural order of things, sort of poisoning the well of
Hmm.
this community. And I think that is profound in and of itself. You talk about the sound, and in the same way that this film is contemplating the idea of being in and of itself, it juxtaposes this extraordinary silence. That's what makes the sound so powerful, is
Hmm.
all of a sudden there is this existence of sound in this empty, soundless world. And let's talk about Jack Fisk a little bit, or a lot,
A
because
lot.
the
Start the
my
timer,
my
folks.
my favorite element of his design in this film, maybe you got to talk about the house, but we'll talk about the house in
Hmm.
a bit. So they originally wanted to shoot this film actually in Texas, and then Jack Fisk went to Texas and said, "This wheat is too small. So we got to find somewhere else." And so they go to Alberta, Canada, where there is this small religious sect who plants this like hybrid wheat that is very, very tall. And Jack Fisk is like, this is what we need to make the ocean of wheat that is required for the majesty of this movie. And that is a crazy thing to do. And then they're running behind schedule, and Terrence Malick is like, "You have 4 weeks to build this house. You got 4 weeks to build this house." And Jack Fisk is like, "That's impossible." And then he does it. And now every time somebody's like, "I don't know that we can do this in X amount of time," and Jack Fisk is like, "What are you talking about? I built the Days of Heaven house in 4 weeks. You can do anything." He's the man.
He was 27 years old.
Obscene.
Yeah. Um, Jack Fisk, one of my favorite working creatives
Working
last
people.
year when we were talking about interview requests and things for the season. The first person that I asked about
Wasn't an actor,
over
it wasn't a director. It
no
was, can I
actors.
talk to Jack Fisk? I was like, yes, you can.
And the reason that I wanted to talk to him was because of Days of Heaven. I remember like learning that he built that house. And to me, what the house, how it feels on this land, it feels like it was just dropped down. It's very strange, right? Like how it just sits there, but it feels spiritual because it feels like it's somehow been there since the dawn of time. Like it's
It
this.
does. It feels monolithic.
Yes, and but it's so, right, it's period correct. And that was one of the things that I talked to him about with Killers of the Flower Moon and just his process and how he finds locations and how he builds things. And one of the coolest things that he told me is that when he's doing a period film, when he's thinking about a time, he doesn't think about it so much as creating something that is, perfectly like what they would have had in that time period or anything like that. He thinks of it as a way for the actors to discover their characters. So, one of the things he mentioned is, okay, so a character, let's say like they have a table and chairs or something like that. It's not going to be brand new what you would see in 1916. It's going to be for this family maybe a few years old, or for that family brand new. And how do I change that to make it feel like something that the actor can use to discover themselves in the film? And I thought that was so beautiful, especially, I don't know if you guys talked about this with Badlands. Did you talk about the great Sissy Spacek story with the notes?
I don't think
I
so.
don't think we did.
Oh, you guys, this is my favorite Jack Fisk story. So when he was a baby working on Badlands, and Sissy Spacek was also a baby working on Badlands, he had a crush on her.
Yeah.
And to connect with her and to make her feel more at home in her character's spaces, he would leave her little trinkets and little notes in the drawers of her character's dresser, and she would find them. And that was how she knew that he liked her and wanted to spend time with her. And the rest is history.
Of course,
Yeah.
Sophia likes that because he's the real Reynolds Woodcock. That's all it is.
Wow. They have
Wow.
similar hair too. But he is the nicest
Yeah.
person. Absolutely. Like we had 20 minutes scheduled and we talked for 45. He
Oh,
is
that's
incredible.
incredible. He's
Again,
one of the great artist of the last
Mhm.
50 years. He
I
really
mean,
is.
again, I not to brag, he was my table mate at CCA, and him and his daughter were so nice, and they were like, and I was asking him, I was like, "What are you working on next?" He was like, "Oh, I'm making a house for one of my kids." And I'm like, and then I took a break to come here tonight, and I was like, I wasn't, I, he literally took that as like, what's the next project that he's doing? Like, is a personal project. It's just like
Yeah.
a house, and so he just builds houses. His daughter was
Mhm.
like, yeah, he'll do that if we ask him to do it, and he'll do it.
Yeah.
I'm like,
It's just he
what a
loves
guy
like
to just be able to have on retainer as your dad. Be like,
Yeah.
yeah, I want a
Mhm.
house. How about that guy who made those freaking houses? How did he not win? What won the Oscar last year? Poor Things.
Poor Things for the Spy Kids
It's a very
design.
well
Fucking
designed movie, I think.
that's
I like the design of
bullshit.
that movie.
Should have
But
been it should have been Killers.
I'll tell you the great
Jack
I
Fisk
agree with
built
that.
so many
The
houses for
fucking train
killers. He
station.
built so many homes, little homes, and he made that community feel more connected to it. Once again, everyone go read my interview with Jack Fisk. It was
And
the
then what
best
was so crazy,
conversation
what
I've
was
had.
great about it too, is that he builds all this, and to then kind of gain the trust of the Osage again to say, I have to blow
Hmm.
this up because I didn't want it to.
Yeah.
And it's so it was, yeah. I mean, like everybody knows, everybody here loved Oppenheimer, but like I would have given that to Fisk. And the fact that he doesn't have an Oscar is ridiculous. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
It's
There's every other day. I think that's actually my favorite movie of last year, Killers.
it's Killers,
Yeah.
but then you think of
I think
Oppenheimer. I
that
mean,
movie is so profound.
they're both. I
Uh,
mean, they're both good.
Gets better and better
they're
with
both
time.
amazing. There
Yeah,
were some really
it
good
was.
stuff.
Yeah, we used to have good movies come out on a regular basis.
I'll tell
Now
you.
we
UCS
just have
aside,
challengers.
now now we just have long legs.
All right, that's enough. Deadpool and Wolverine.
Fucking
Um,
long legs. God damn.
I'll tell you the thing that left the biggest impression on me about the house is
Hmm.
in this world where there is nothing but horizontal space, it's very vertical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Feels
And
like it stretches up to the sky.
yeah,
Like it's,
Feels like
yeah.
it feels like a skyscraper surrounded by everything, and
Hmm.
it's like
which
a
there's again
center
multiple,
point to
there's sort
everything.
of this dichotomy there where it is about this opulence. There is an opulence to having multiple stories because it's more expensive, it's harder to build. But there's also this idea of the landowner kind of having the higher ground on his laborers. And I think that is a very important element of the film
Well, I
where
think
that
yeah.
does feel like the high the the boss sort of looking down on his laborers, which feels like something that might be bleeding in from Chicago, where you have Richard Gere, who apparently does nothing but kill his bosses. Uh,
Hell
and
Super
yeah.
two.
that's a vital element of the movie. And it's also, I think, sort of related to this Adam and Eve allegory that is
Mhm.
very prevalent throughout the film. What do you see the first time we see the farmer? He's biting an apple as Bill and Abby arrive on the farm. It's a very obvious image, but it's a potent image, and it's done in a subtle enough way that most people probably won't even notice it. But that's Malick. It's all about these moments, these small things that amount to enormous things.
Can I
Mhm.
ask a
And what do
can I
we see
oh
really quick up on the Adam and Eve
yeah,
thing?
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
what do we see right before the locus when Linda is looking in that book? The final animal that we see is the snake right before
Yeah,
everything really
yeah.
blows up and gets even more violent.
Hmm. Can I ask you guys a question? So Bill and Abby, they leave Chicago, they start heading out, down south, I guess, out west, however you want to say it. They so they their plan is very old, I mean, obviously old fashioned, but becoming siblings and saying that because they don't want to spread gossip, right? Is the gossip about like that they're what would the gossip be then at that point? Is it that they're married out of that they're together and that they like it asks too many questions? Is that what it is? Like, why are you running away from home? Like, like when I was sitting there, I'm like, that seems like a very young person's not thinking it straight. Like, why don't you just say that you're boyfriend and girlfriend, or why don't you just say that you're husband and wife,
Well,
and lie about that, and that her sister is actually, their daughter or something like that. You know what I mean? Like,
It's
because I
his
think,
sister, right?
or
yeah,
yeah,
Yeah.
his sister. I mean, yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
But I think in my mind, like the siblings thing works and makes sense because it forces them to be together, right? Like it's not like they're gonna separate siblings in some
hmm
way and like send one off or something like that.
that's true.
But also, if they're married or if they're dating, like we don't have that open opportunity that comes along for her to marry the farmer
That's
and get
true.
the inheritance, which, like, when you're watching this movie, I think the thing that I always think back to when you see like how filthy these workers are out in the fields and how, again, that house is so clean and so bright and you
Even
can't
saying
fault
Shepard in
them. Yeah,
comparison to everybody else. Yeah,
right, and his perfect hair. You
yeah,
can't like fault them for wanting that and for aspiring to that and for wanting to weasel their way into that type of
yeah,
life in any way that they can. So I think it just opens them up to more options, really.
yeah. But it
It's a
also,
Empowers
plot
them.
device
Yeah.
and also, I think, telling of both of those characters where they are more predisposed to care about perception than
yeah.
reality,
No,
right?
I found it just interesting. Like,
Hmm.
it's one of those things that, like, you're like, it could be that simpler way of just being like, oh, we're married and everything, but then that doesn't
Hmm.
help them move up their station, right? It
Yeah.
doesn't leave, like you said, Sophia, those options open. But then as she and Sam Shepard, as Abby and him starts becoming potentially romantically involved and then obviously married, there becomes this jealousy within Bill, this and then that's when the questions start arising. And that's when um the Robert Wilk character, the sort of foreman, is trying to explain to Sam Shepard, like, this is, you're blinded by love, and it's just not practicality of seeing that somebody could be coming after you in such a way. And I think that just those three characters is such an interesting dynamic as the movie is going on, because then when they all are in that house, it feels like it feels like unspoken things until it boils up, obviously, at the end. But it's just it's the way in which Abby and Bill flaunt their connection in front of everyone. It is that of people that have never had this before, and they finally have that house, that security. And what do they do with it? Is they squander it, because they can't help themselves to squander it, because their love for each other is so infectious. And then that love becomes then jealousy on both of Bill and the farmer's part. And then it becomes anger, and it becomes violence. And then there's no turning around that. And then, right when, at the same time as the crops and everything are flourishing in the world, and everything's actually at a pretty normal state, but when the boat starts rocking, it's when things start falling apart and everything crumbles around them perfectly at the same time. And then you just get this fight in this. It's what my background is tonight. The image you think of Days of Heaven, with the locust just behind them and just
Do you
swimming.
know how they shot that?
Well, Jay, I was going to ask, can you tell me how they shot that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's incredible. So there was actually, they had a really hard time finding the locust for the final sequence, and they ended up just sending some of their people down and literally just taking a net and getting a bunch of crickets and locusts and boxing them up and shipping them to Canada, which is insane.
Because those
But
boys were big. They were
They were
huge.
some big suckers. And then also
Hmm.
some of them, they were like, we can't get a good shot of these guys. And I assume this wouldn't be encouraged today, but they just glued some of them to the wheat so that they would stay in one place.
Oh,
But
great. Now we're going to get
the
PETA after this episode. God damn it.
the shot that you were talking about, which is kind of like that Barry Lyndon shot where they're in the parlor. It's one of those that is so painterly, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
That shot, they didn't know how to film it. Those are not locus, right? You can't really get a bunch of locus to operate in a way that you want them to. So what they actually did was they got a helicopter and they dropped a bunch of like seeds or whatever it was, and then they played the film in reverse. And so in the scene, they had everybody walking backwards so that in the scene, when they reversed the film, everyone was walking forwards and you had everything coming up,
Mm.
which is some movie magic unlike almost anything you've ever seen.
You know what they would do now,
It's
Jay?
ingenuity to the nth degree.
You know what they would do now?
They'd probably be computer bugs.
Yeah, there'd be
Yeah.
nanobites. You know what I mean?
You think
Yeah.
so?
Yeah, this would all be digitized. It'd be like set in the year
Oh yeah,
like
this whole movie would be digitized.
404,062 and yeah, but the house would still look
You
the
know
same
what?
way.
You know what's crazy is so this movie obviously emphasizes magic hour, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
they could shoot sometimes for 20 minutes a day. And you know who else did that? Inarritu. And you know who did it more effectively? Because the Inarritu movie has so much blue to it. And Malick, very specifically, when he was making this movie, was like, I don't want the blue. I think blue skies are garish and they don't give off the idea of divinity that I want them to give off.
Which
Where
Inarritu movie?
the DiCaprio
The Revenant.
Revenant.
Oh, the
Revenant.
Revenant. Oh, the Revenant.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was his whole thing with him.
I was like,
Natural light.
I was like,
It's
the
all
guy.
natural light. It's all
Oh,
shot
okay,
of
okay,
magic
okay.
hour.
I got you. I
Mhm.
got you. I got you. I got you.
But this film, and you know, I've read so much about it, and I can't even begin to interpret exactly what they did technically. But the lengths that they went to give off the look that this movie has, which is one of the most distinct aesthetics any movie has ever had,
Yeah.
and it does give off this idea of spiritual revelation, like the revelation of existence. Nature is like scripture, right? It's something told and presented to us. It's not molded by humanity. It is this thing that sits in front of us and is indescribable. And that's what this movie captures that almost all other movies haven't captured, but Malick has somehow managed to capture like 5 times.
Mhm.
Well,
It's
I
it's
mean,
incredible.
the movie I thought about a lot when I was watching this is sort of just like the yin and yang of the American dream and moving across the country was I was thinking a lot of Ford a lot when I was watching this, and I was thinking Grapes of Wrath and how that movie kind of obviously is more romanticized by the end of what Tom is saying at the end of that movie, but it's this is a more realistic version of that because I think
It's a very cynical movie despite
Yeah,
all of its
because Bill and
spirituality.
Bill and Abby, they go out into this world, and like you're saying, Jay, he can't leave well enough alone. He's just too in love with this girl. He's in too much involved with this whole situation. He's power hungry, obsessive, um, a wild spirit. And when he murders the farmer in this movie, it is like I had it again all here set up perfectly, but it doesn't matter because the natural order is just going to suggest that you're going to repeat this, and you are who you are. There is no you can change your environment, you can change the course of everything, but you can't change who you are fully. And I think
In
that
a lot
like
of ways, it is humanity as a defier
yeah,
of
it's just like
divinity.
if you're
Mhm.
violent, you're going
And
to be
humanity as a
violent.
harbinger
You
of
know?
hell,
Yeah.
really. When you have the fire, when you have the fields set out, it is a plague that besets a hellish inferno.
Well, and
Mhm.
it's really interesting to me is like when these two are fighting essentially for the soul of this land, this house, and for Abby, the men around them do not pull them apart. They because they are very much bystanders and they are just innocent people trying to make an innocent life. And I found that to be really interesting about just the fact that it is just between the two of them. It's, and these guys are around there and they
Mhm.
could stop him at any point, but it's, but in a weird way, also like, do they want to stop him? Like, like there's that conversation well too. But no, I found his
Mhm.
decision making of when to, because like you're right, Jay, like this movie, it could be super plotty and you could have all these moments of dialogue, but when it chooses to actually speak and say something is in moments where the characters are in vastly vulnerable, desperate situations, I feel. And I found that to be really beautiful this
And they
rewatch.
react to them with silence.
Yeah.
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 Silent suppress, a
I
lot of this is about suppression too. And how suppression can lead to then a boiling effect.
Well, and the power of perceived nothingness and how that
Yes.
juxtaposes somethingness.
Well, how a
Mhm.
kernel from a look or a glance can turn the mind wild, I think is
And how the
something that,
existence of that small moment is, as Sophia said earlier, like kind of this divine thing that is
Mhm.
it when you consider it from the point of view of the day-to-day grind of the human experience seems completely insignificant, but when you consider it in the context of something that exists in this world where nothing could exist, it is an immaculate thing.
Yeah.
Again,
And
I sound stupid, but
no, I
no,
mean, no,
no. I think when I think about too, at the end when they are fighting and the locusts come and there's the fire, there's a very easy way to read it, which is not all the way there, which is what I love, which is that you could on the surface view it as this Old Testament punishment for their actions.
yeah,
But it isn't quite that. It's
no,
never quite that clear. And that's what I like about it. He really subverts how you feel there. He uses that as a baseline, as an image we're familiar with, and then ends up making it feel both more significant than that somehow and also less clear than that. It's just about these two characters in that moment, like you guys were saying. And I'd love to get a little bit nerdy about cinematography and art history, if that's okay.
that's fine.
Um, I'm glad that we brought up Magic Hour and Barry Lyndon earlier, Jay, you mentioning that because I
one
view
of one
them
of the greats.
as sister films in terms of how they look because Barry Lyndon uses natural lighting and these wide open spaces, but they're very different periods in history and within art history in particular. So John Alcott for Barry Lyndon, when you look at his reference points and when you look at Barry Lyndon and how painterly that is, it's Rococo, it's chiaroscuro, it's looking at these like very old styles that fit the time. And when you're looking here at Days of Heaven, both are, one of our MVPs of the movie, Nestor Almendros, our cinematographer, and also Jack Fisk, they were referencing Wyeth and Hopper. And those painters specifically were looking at American naturalism. So drained of those bright blue skies. Like they were looking at characters. Like if you look at those paintings, so many of those reference points are actually a bit, those colors are a bit duller, or if they're really beautiful, there are a lot of browns and tans and those natural colors. And I think it's just a really beautiful touch. And I'm glad that he didn't use too many brights and everything feels
Yeah.
very grounded and down to earth.
Yeah.
Down to the clothes too. And one thing I love
Mm-hmm.
about this is you have these people coming from the city who are in these fancier clothes, but doing this intensely lower class labor,
Mm-hmm.
which again is that idea of the city kind of infiltrating this place of pure naturalism, as again, the house already has, and things like that. You can't completely say that the farmer is innocent in this corruption of nature because he's already infiltrated it. And it's just the beginning. And I love your point about this familiar imagery that is far more complicated than that imagery is normally presented. It's another incredible element of the film. I think there are several incredible elements of this movie, in case people haven't noticed. But also, I should mention it wasn't just there were actually two cinematographers on this film.
Yeah,
Mhm.
because
We had
um
a couple, like a consultant come in, Haskell
yeah,
Wexler,
yeah.
and then wasn't John Bailey the camera operator?
Well, John
Former.
Bailey uh and the original cinematographer, these two guys, they were one trying to figure all this out. And but they were signed up for another project and they had to bail like towards the very, very end of it. John Bailey, of course, then goes on to be like a very prominent cinematographer in his own right, as well as also being the president of the Academy at one point. So yeah, but at the time he's just the camera operator, and they're working with Malick to create this. But yeah, they did have to towards the end because they were running a little bit behind
But
schedule.
it feels
Um,
completely of a piece.
yeah,
Mhm.
You
no
cannot
one.
tell scene to scene who shot what.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't feel like there's much difference in
If you want to watch a
anything.
fun interview, Haskell Wexler.
Oh
Highly
yeah,
recommend. Stream of consciousness all the way. You don't understand quite
He
what he
was really
is
good in the book that I
saying.
read. Yeah.
He
Mm.
I like how he basically said he came in to crack the whip and he was shocked at the work that had already been done, just how beautiful it was.
Yeah. Um, I personally, one person we haven't talked about a lot is Brooke Adams as Abby in the film. I think we haven't. Jay, was she the first? Was she the only choice, or
So there, from what I read, there was one other potential option, and it was only when Travolta was on board, and it was Carrie Fisher.
interesting?
Hmm.
Carrie Fisher was going to be in the film with Travolta, apparently, and then she did a screen test with Gere, and she had zero chemistry with Richard Gere.
Carrie Fisher had zero chemistry with Richard Gere.
Yeah,
That's
so they then did a bunch of auditions with other people, and somebody played for Malick strictly audio, no video of Adams, and he was like, "I love her voice. Let's give her the role."
Hmm. You know who
So
I think would have been good?
hmm.
Diane Keaton.
There you go.
I don't know. I don't know that the turtlenecks work on the farm, but
I would wear a turtleneck on the farm.
apparently while they were filming, and I never got this impression while watching it, it was very cold, which is not
I
how the film
love
feels
I love that shot of
for
them
the
in the
most part.
snow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that is so gorgeous. Just unbelievably beautiful with the dark hair and the snow. Oh.
Brooke Adams had a real Catherine Ross kind of vibe. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And I really liked her in this. And I feel her conflict.
I think she's really good.
You know what I mean? It's
Hmm.
just, no, what were you going to say, Sophia? Were you going
Oh,
to say
no, I
something?
was just gonna say her hair color, which they mention a few times, is
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Perfect dark hair.
But no, I think that Malick, you know, he's able to really, you really have to see her inner monologue within herself because she doesn't really have like most of the characters in this movie a ton of dialogue. So a lot of
Hmm.
it is her conflict. I mean, there is that moment
Looks.
where Shepard is far off in the field. It's like a little bit off in the fields, and Gears run is left, and he's returned, and she's just the way she's holding his hands, and she's just trying to. You can convey there that she's trying to understand why he left and why he left her and a sense of loneliness. And now, honestly, she really does have a connection to both of them. And it could form this marriage in sort of obviously a ruse and a way to get money and power. But it doesn't feel like that towards the end. She kind of has to shoo him off, and she has to tell him like this man, even though yes, you can say what you want about the farmer. There is a sensitivity to him that she's drawn to, and it's a difference between the wildness that Bill presents. And I do like that, you know, I like where she ends up at the end of this film, where she rejects the house, one because her husband's gone and Bill is gone now, and she then leaves Linda off at this boarding school, and she's going off on her own now to try to find herself, and then she'd try to come back for her sister. But then her sister does the exact same thing that she does and goes off with this boy. And again, it is just this history of nature repeating, humans always just kind of the circle of life, just always seeming to find itself. And yeah, I think that I think she's perfect casting in this, to balance these two different men, because she herself is these two conflicted energies that is clashing for most of the film until the two men's energies clash in that field.
She is sort of one thing that I think people criticize with Malick is the main woman in so many of his movies is sort of presented as this ethereal innocent, which I think Abby in this film is to a certain degree. I think it's so powerful, again, on this spiritual level that it always works for me. And it certainly is, in a certain way, a kind of Christian representation of the main woman in any story. But again, I think it leans more into that spirituality. And in this film, I think she represents really kind of the center of the story's universe. She is the sun that the two celestial men are rotating around.
Yeah.
And the desire for her is driving so much of the plot. The envy, the ego of these men is what, in many ways, the sin of these men is what, in many ways, drives this community to burn to the ground, literally. And it is this supernova of destruction in the end, because these men cannot put aside their own senses of self to build a place together, to unify in some way. And that's very powerful as well.
Yeah. There's a really powerful image that shows like how she is the center of their world, I think. It's when she's dancing to like, music on the Victrola and we see her shot through the window. It is stunning. It's always one of those shots that just takes my breath away. There's so many of those in the movie, but that I think when we compare it to maybe shots of nature, we think about how actually good Malick is at using a single image to convey something deeper about a character. That's always one that comes to mind.
When he does a very purposeful shot like that, it really stands out, because most of the time it is about the majesty of the unexpected, right? The majesty of the thing that you can't control. And so when he does have this kind of more painterly, every shot a painting kind of sensibility, it is striking.
Yeah. We need to talk about the narration too, because
we need to talk about Linda, who sounds like she's been smoking for 40 years.
Yeah, she's on a
Margot
peyote
Robbie
farm.
wants to sound like in every movie that she's in.
Yes. Yes. Oh my God. Oh my God. It was
Sorry for that. But
No,
I
it's
think I
fine.
love how her
It sounded almost
narration-
Janis Joplin-esque at times. I was like, shit.
Yeah.
Oh
It's
my
so
God.
good.
Sophia, you got
but
a
it's-
Linda? Let's hear your best Linda.
Yeah, you got a
I
Linda?
can't. I don't have a Linda.
Bring it up and you
I
don't
should
have
have
an
practiced.
yeah.
But I love how right, like we have this very detached narration that also feels very intimate at the same time. Like sometimes this character to me feels oddly omniscient. Like she knows everything about not just the world of the film, but everything, period. And other times she seems to have no idea what's going on at all and just like a loose observer who's pretty lightly connected. And yet she also gives the film its shape. So I think it's a pretty ingenious use of narration, and I'm always struck by it when I watch.
Whereas most of the Badlands narration is, I think, very observational and not as metaphysical as some of the narration is here. In this film, occasionally it is like you're half good. Everybody has half good and half evil in them, right? It's like
Hmm.
the devil loves when people perform acts of evil, and it is so representative of not exactly what is happening in the story, but on this incomprehensible level, right? Like how we rationalize the things that human beings are capable of and how we cope with our own ills. And that's something that Malick, I think, carries through the rest of his career, really.
Hmm.
That's a big part of why this is the beginning of the Malick that people think about when they think of Malick.
Yeah, that's like that's definitely how it is for me because I think this is the movie that has the like particular rhythm that I think of when I think of a Malick movie. Like you have to understand that and try to connect with the slow pace and the idiosyncrasies of these characters and of the storytelling to really appreciate and open your eyes to what he's doing. I thought of the line from Lady Bird when her mom, after they listen to Grapes of Wrath, is like, why don't we just sit with what we heard?
Well, it is, but even in the moment of Days of Heaven, and I think everything that comes after it, it hits you like in your bones. And in
Mhm.
Badlands, there's kind of this purposeful distance
Yeah.
that the film has where these characters are trying to be James Dean, but they're not trying to be themselves. They're trying to operate outside of themselves. Whereas in this film, these people are grappling with, again, the very idea of being in the context of this pretty familiar story broadly. And
Hmm.
that philosophical core is what drives Malick forever. And I think that does exist in Badlands. But here, again, he is unburdened by the ability to try and make a career out of filmmaking.
Yeah.
And so he's trying to become a true artist and a philosopher. He's trying to use philosophy, integrate philosophy into filmmaking in ways that it never really has been before, because only within the last 15, 20 years has film really been taken seriously as a medium. And so he's trying to just propel it forward even more. And not
Hmm.
necessarily, that's not like his goal, but this is just his
Right.
sensibility. And it just so happens that that propels the form forward.
Yeah. What keeps sitting with me this time, and you're right, it does like get into your bones. Like it feels like I don't know, it's a very deep experience that doesn't really leave you. But it's this idea, when I think about it, it's like I describe this, I think, sometimes as a film of stillness or of, thinking about nature, something you have to sit down with, pause and think about. But this is a movie of motion, actually. Like characters and animals and the wind, things are always moving. But at the same time, you're forced to settle into that. I'm not making any sense, but it's just a weird juxtaposition that he includes that makes me feel again like this is some sort of divine work that's all encompassing of how nature really feels.
That is, it's impossible to verbalize. It's the
Yeah.
motion of the foreground with the unlimited stillness of the background, where the horizon almost feels like it doesn't exist. And
Yeah.
therefore, there's this limitlessness of existence itself, which again,
Hmm.
I sound stupid now, but
Wait,
I think we sound high.
wait, the
yeah,
hor- wait, the Horizon
part
Part
one.
one.
part one,
Oh,
an American song.
Ryan, what do you think of this movie? I feel like we've kind of been trampling all over you.
Yeah, it's fine. You know,
This is
it's
how I
fine.
felt on the Phantom Thread episode, where y'all were
oh.
No,
a great episode, one
no,
of our
I think it's
masterpieces,
no, I think it's a
our days
beautiful.
of heaven in many
No,
ways.
I think that this has been a beautiful conversation. I've got stuff in, but no, it's a beautiful film, and it's super tragic. Every time I
Mhm.
watch it, I get really sad. That's why,
Me too.
I know that
Doesn't
this is,
think much of humanity,
I know this is weird,
probably, but maybe it does.
time of recording and all, but like every time I watch a Malick movie for the series, I've been watching another movie to kind of balance
Hmm.
out. I don't think you can marathon through Malick. That's a lot to get through. So I've been having Michael Mann and M. Night Shyamalan movies kind of balance out everything because and everything. And so I um so watching this and then watching Manhunter was an experience in one night. But I Manhunter, good movie by the way. Um no, I think that this is a really beautiful and interesting, one of the best depictions I think of the dangers of the American dream and the dangers of in which I think our whole world and specifically the land that we live in rejects the notion that our dreams are something that we can chase or that we can evade. And the actions of our past is something that we can evade as well. Like I've said already, I think that this movie is all about, like when we talked about Badlands, that movie was definitely about the violence in our culture and how I think, how we're moving from one era to the next. This is going even further back into that. And this is on the cusp of us about to head into World War One. And so this is, and
Yeah, that's something we haven't brought up yet. I think that's
and,
very important.
Mhm.
and it's super
Yeah.
important too, because it's like right when this country is again at another titanic shift. And I think that that's very purposeful. I think that Malick always has not just spirituality. I think he always has history on the mind when he's making his movies for sure.
Malick's first
And
5 movies all have explicit ties to, or maybe not necessarily explicit, implicit or explicit ties to warfare,
yeah,
which I think is something that people
Mhm.
don't really talk about a lot.
no, I don't
Yeah.
think, no, I totally agree. And I think it's again a movie about uh, innocence and how these two young people really don't have it. And yet it's kind of around a community of people that are just innocently trying to make by. And how if you want to, like you guys have said, it's the Adam and Eve sort of look into the film, grabbing that power, grabbing getting too close to the sun. And that journey is never, ever, ever one that has come out clean for any protagonist in any story throughout history. And I think her leaving on that train as the soldiers are departing for war, her war has just her battlefield and war and casualties have all just happened. And as she is going off to lick her wounds to try to find her peace, right? The world is about to go, at least from our perspective, into a giant war searching for its peace. And it will be in a very bloody conflict as well. And so I think that it's again these stories image a lot of what's going on within its time period. You super don't have to look into it like that. You can just be like, oh, okay, she's going on a train and she's gone off in the distance and these guys. But I think it's more purposeful. I think it's more speaking about, again, the time and the place and the specificity of the historical and spiritual ramifications of things. And that's what makes Malick so great. And I love this movie. Um, I think I gave it 4.5. I really should have given it 5. I don't know why I didn't
Bump
give it
that
5.
baby up.
I was gonna, yeah. I don't know why I put it at 4.5. I think it was.
I tried to give it 6, but they wouldn't let me.
Yeah.
You think they
Won't
will
let you
ever
add
give
an
us a
extra
6 on?
star. I I think with warfare though, quickly, I know we're going long. There's just
No,
so
that's
much to
fine.
say about this movie, but I think with war and thinking about how many of his films are connected to war, either right there at the precipice of one or directly involved. Like war, to me, warfare, that's the ultimate man-made destruction of nature. And so it makes sense that Malick would want to set his films within that period to, I think, even heighten the spiritual elements of his stories. But what I think is even, and he loves, I think, tying physical beauty and punishment together in a way. And, but what I think about with warfare and everything that is interesting with his films is that here, like, he doesn't really seem interested in heroes or villains in the traditional sense.
No.
And that I think makes it feel more profound. And he's not known, I think, for his characters again or the scripts, but that is something I'm always thinking about with his films.
Yeah. I don't think that I don't think you're intended to root for these two. And I don't think you're intended to root for Sam Shepard. I think you're just weirdly enough, and I know this, maybe I'll sound like an idiot doing this. It feels like a
We've all done it
one.
this episode.
We
I'm
keep saying it. It's fine.
yeah, it's
Again, it's
fine.
like we,
But like
yeah.
I know that Linda is our narrator, and we're seeing a lot of this film, I think, through her perspective. Um, and maybe that's why the dialogue is limited, because for a child, that there'd be limitations on how to articulate the things that are around you at this time, and being moved out of your childhood like environment all the way across somewhere. You become very silent, or you become kind of furniture in the background, really, for the adults and their actions. But I don't know. I feel like that it's not accusatory. It's not, but it's not prophesizing these characters. I think it is literally just saying, this is basic humanity, especially at a time in which people were most desperate. They were trying to make new things. They were trying to make new of themselves. You could still reinvent yourself. Now, as we're getting closer and closer into the 80s and stuff like that, in our own time, we can't really reinvent ourselves in a modern world with there, this was our last time we could do that, before world wars and before more responsibilities, before stability and violence really set in. And so it's actually a really fascinating movie to watch before you then watch The Thin Red Line, because it really speaks, I think, to that movie. And that's why this 20-year gap that we're going to talk about on that episode, and we can kind of talk about here, it's a fascinating gap then to continue and make a straight up war movie after this, because this movie is leaving you off with the fact that we're going to spend the next 20, 30 years and beyond, in a much different world that this one is in, right? We're going to be in a place with two world wars and nuclear annihilation at any point being at the forefront in the back end of your mind. So yeah, I think Terry knows what he's doing. That's
I've
for
been
sure.
sitting on this for about 5 minutes. I got to get it out.
Well, we've actually run
To
out of
Sophia's
time.
point about Malick's relationship to warfare, to connect it to Sophia's last episode, Crimson Tide.
Oh,
In Terrence Malick's world, much like Denzel says in the film, the true enemy is war itself.
Yes.
And there you go.
there you go. We always
Bringing it
come
full
full
circle.
circle.
There you go. Full circle. Anything else you guys want to talk about? Days of Heaven. I feel like
Oh my God. Ennio Morricone. Ever heard of him? How about the famous, the great shot where there's the broken uh, china glass in the river and then the fish start swimming around it?
Yeah.
Mhm.
That was actually filmed in Jack Fisk's apartment
Wow.
in his fish tank.
I love when directors do shit like that, where it's like
Mhm.
the trick of the camera and the trick of
And
trick of
Terrence
the
Malick
audience.
feels like the last guy who would ever do that.
No,
Yeah.
But he did it.
that's like an ultimate Michael Mann move. Like, I was watching The Insider a couple of weeks ago, and every time he gets to the mailbox scene, I'm like, and my wife looks next to me, and she's like, I know they flew all the way out there to just get that one shot. Like, I don't have to explain it to me, but it's in the rules. But yeah, I would have never thought that he would just have done that in someone's apartment.
No, it's
Wild.
crazy. It's crazy. I mean, I got a couple more things and then like 15 other things, but um it I got a lot of stuff for this. I mean, it's just I'm having a
Yeah.
ball going through all these.
One thing I'll add, I always just think it's so one of the like unsettling things about the movie or something that makes me uneasy is how this farmer is supposedly very ill and dying, but nothing like ever comes of that.
Isn't that interesting? Like the fact
Yeah.
that honestly that yes, that's how, Bill's like, okay, well then get with her. But then it's almost like, and this is, I guess, back to the point that you were making, Jay, about Abby's innocence. It's almost like she has this spiritual healing power to keep him going because we don't see him deteriorate. If anything, it feels like he's getting stronger as he's been around her, right?
Now, there is
And
this idea, given that the doctor explicitly says you have a year, there's maybe this idea of a miracle, right?
mhm, like she is his miracle. And so
Yeah.
there, and then that means that when Bill is trying to be romantic or infiltrating that, that's also his own survival, not just the survival of a marriage or the survival of his power that he has there, but literally his own soul and his own being, because it's something that you could read into, I guess, as well, if that makes sense. Sophia,
hmm
I don't know.
Yeah.
That
I
might
think,
sound
no, I
dumb.
think so. I think so. It's just always something that like, it just, yeah, it makes me feel uneasy when I watch it because you don't feel, at least I don't, like, I don't feel good about him still being there.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So
Like,
you
I
feel
don't,
so that he survives.
yeah. Like, I think I always just, because I don't know, I feel I have very complicated thoughts about him as
You
a
just think Richard
character.
Gere's handsome. You want him to
Yeah, I mean,
win.
I know who
He's
I would
looking
choose.
Oh
snackalicious
my
in this,
God,
by
he's
the
a
way.
fucking snack
He's
in that.
so, oh my God, he's so like tan and
I know he's
beautiful.
I know he's young in this, but like it was also giving very Warren Beatty a lot in
The
this too.
this movie reminds me a little bit of Reds
Yeah.
in especially at the beginning when we get the
Browns.
portraits.
That Brown reminded me of
And
McCabe, to be honest with you. Like
yeah,
that suit.
another one of
Definitely
my
has a little
favorite
bit of a
movies.
McCabe aesthetic.
Yeah. Take the
Yeah.
beard
No,
off. Yeah.
I feel like, yeah, Richard Gere. There's also that shot that I texted you guys earlier, which is one of my favorites, which I think Pride and Prejudice definitely took with their Mr. Darcy of him just walking on the horizon line. It is
Oh,
just
the Joe Wright.
beautiful. Yes.
When are we doing Joe Wright?
I actually like Joe Wright. A lot of people
That'll be a
hate
fun
him.
series, I
I
think.
like him.
He's got he's an
It'd be
interesting
interesting.
fellow.
You know what I
We'll
think
I've
talk
is an
liked
about
quite
this.
a few.
interesting movie? The
The
Woman
solo,
in the Window.
the woman in the window.
I think
Oh,
there he's doing some stuff in that.
I've never seen it.
It's kind of
Never
fun.
watched it. He did the soloist, right?
I'm also just an Amy Adams guy.
Sophia, would you come on the Pan episode?
Have not seen Pan. I must admit that.
I think I would want atonement.
See, I'm not a big Atonement fan.
I would want to talk about it
Atonement's pretty
with the
good.
book though, because the book is one of my favorite books
The book
ever.
is extraordinary.
His
That's
Pride
why
and
I'm
Prejudice kind of rocks the house.
I love his Pride
that's
and
his best
Prejudice.
that's his best movie.
Maybe I do that one for Donald Sutherland. I don't know.
Oh,
All
he's so good in
hypotheticals.
that. When they were
Mhm.
when he passed away and they were showing those clips of him in that movie, and
Mhm.
he's so perfect. It's very, I mean, yeah, it was like watching that, I was getting vibes of Tracy Letts and Lady Bird.
Did
It
he do
was like,
Cyrano?
yes, he did do
Yeah,
Cyrano.
he
I
did.
liked that movie.
I like
The
Cyrano.
forgotten Cyrano.
That movie does not exist.
No.
No, it
Yeah.
I have
doesn't.
a
I liked it.
I
I
have a
like,
question for you guys.
yeah.
Which plague do you prefer? The locust in Days of Heaven or the frogs in Magnolia?
The Locust
Locust in
and
Days of
Days of
Heaven for
Heaven.
me.
Yeah,
Okay.
But
Me too.
yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't know if there would be a split.
I do
But
love them. I do love them frogs though, but
mhm.
I think that's when it's like, come on now, it's a little much. And I love PTA to death,
no, I
but
mean the frogs are
I
look,
mean
my
the frogs,
first
but
the
it's cool.
first time I ever wrote about movies, my blog was called ratingfrogsreviews.com. So
Is this stuff
it's
still up?
obviously incredibly important to me.
Can I still read
I
it?
think we lost that domain. I think GoDaddy kicked us off of that one,
Damn it. Okay.
unfortunately. But
Do you save any of that work?
absolutely
As
not.
your friend,
I bet it is terrible.
I was gonna say, as your friend, as your podcast co-host and your editor, I'm kind of curious to see what those
I
early
think I
Jay Ledbetter
when the site went down,
scribbles were.
I think I edited and reposted a piece about No Country for Old Men that I remember really liking, but
We gotta
that
see it.
is it.
There's some old work at an old site that
Can I
doesn't
give I got
exist anymore that I
one
love.
more story about Days of Heaven, which is kind of a personal funny story. about I went to a screening of The Assassination of Jesse James where Roger Deakins was present and did a Q&A.
Excuse me, Jay. The Assassination of Jesse James by the Kyle Robert Ford. We do full titles on this damn show. You know better than that. Anyway.
And he did a Q&A before the movie, actually. And the poor woman who was given the task of interviewing Roger Deakins and his wife.
He's prickly.
He is prickly.
Yeah,
he
but Sophia survived hers.
Yeah.
You got him on a good day, I think. I think you got him on a good day. Yeah.
I think you could tell that I meant well and had done my research.
Yeah.
This woman who I've met and and I can't remember her name. I apologize. And honestly, she probably wouldn't want to be called out for this, but she was talking to Roger Deakins, obviously, about the cinematography of The Assassination of Jesse James. And at one point she said, I heard that you were very inspired by the film Days of Heaven while filming The Assassination of Jesse James. And Roger Deakins was just like, oh, because there was like weight in the movie? What are you talking about? That's ridiculous. And I was like, man, that is mean to her. But
and then he dropped the mic and walked out.
Honestly, the craziest thing, I will conclude with this. There was a person in the crowd who went to one of the art schools in Atlanta. And she said, hello, Roger. I'm a cinematography student at SCAD in Atlanta, the Savannah College of Arts and whatever.
Design.
And we've all got a lot of fear about AI. I would just love it if you could give us some sense of stability and security about the existence of AI in cinematography. And he was like, I don't know. I think AI is kind of useful, actually. I mean, it's a real tool that I think we can all exploit in certain ways. And then everybody was just awkwardly looking at each other like, that was literally the exact opposite of what she was asking for. And his wife was like, oh my God. What are you talking about?
Is their podcast still going? Their podcast still going?
I think so.
Yeah, I think they do it regularly. They've had some great episodes. I don't listen to it all the time, but if there's somebody that I'm really interested in listening to, I'll listen. And it's
who really they had on?
Well, they had Joel Cohen on, which was incredible. They've had plenty of cinematographers on.
They had PTA on?
I don't think they've had PTA on.
I think so. I feel like
did they have
listen to that one?
Did they have
Terrence Malick on? No.
Did they have
they have not.
What's his face? Hoyte van Hoytema? They have
I think
I want to say yes.
That sounds familiar.
That'd be a good conversation between the past goat and the new goat. That's who the new goat is, I think.
The speaking of podcast and press, so Malick didn't want to do any press for this movie, but he agreed to do an interview with Rolling Stone under the stipulations that he could not be photographed and could not be quoted, which seems antithetical to the idea of an interview. But that's how he has lived his life since. What the interviewer said, he was a super pleasant, like he was a great hang. He was like, Terrence Malick rules. I don't really get it.
He's from the Midwest.
Whatever.
Can I ask, what phone do you think Terrence Malick has?
A landline.
That's probably right.
Yeah, that's probably right. He just carries it around. He's got a long
You know what?
cord.
Honestly, you know what I bet he has? The same phone as we do, but he just doesn't interact with people that he doesn't care about.
You think he does like I think he just has a regular flip phone. I don't think he does text.
No, he's scrolling TikTok every day. He's a TikToker.
I would highly doubt that Terrence Malick he would be a TikTok. Like,
he's looking at Sydney Sweeney memes every day.
Oh my God. If she ends up in his next movie, oh my God. Well, I mean, she could be one of those floating
Malick.
Very
naturalistic.
Movies. Yeah. She could be in a floating Malick. You know what I mean?
The good thing is that his movies don't have a lot of dialogue.
I was going to say, no dialogue in those movies. She's just a face at that point, and that could be dangerous, actually.
I'll be honest, she's got a face.
You know who I think could actually end
I'm
up
gonna stop.
be a director for Sydney Sweeney, and it would be terrifying. I
I
was
know who
thinking
you're
about
gonna
this.
say because
Who you think?
I have one.
I was gonna say Paul Schrader.
Paul Verhoeven. Oh,
Oh, no.
Ah, the
The
Pauls, the two
Pauls.
Pauls.
the
Two Paul
Pauls.
Bears there. Oh my god! Like I feel like if somehow Schrader got Sydney Sweeney to sign on a movie, it would be like that Lindsay Lohan movie that he did.
Oh, that one. Oh my God.
Yeah, that movie's wild. We should
It's
do
on the
Schrader.
Criterion channel. I was clicking through. I saw
Oh,
that.
because
I was
it's
like, oh my
because it's
God.
part of like
Was his
Inspirational.
the Canyons or the other?
Yeah, the Canyons.
The
Canyons.
Canyons. Yeah.
Yeah. We should do Schrader. Schrader would be fun.
I would love to do Schrader. I love Schrader.
You want to know why? There's plenty of material to research with Schrader.
Oh,
Not-
there's some tangents in there.
There's some tangents. Might even get him on. You think Schrader would come on his own series? Talk about his.
You know what? We might be able to get him.
I think we could do it.
There's a
There's
non-0% chance we could get him.
Yeah, exactly. So you're saying there's a chance. All right. Anything
Near
else?
zero.
Days Heaven. Anything else? Last things? No?
Perfect movie. Love it very much. Still my favorite Malick, but I am gonna watch along with you guys for these
Wow.
episodes and see if that changes.
Wow.
It's
It's the only time Sophia's ever done that.
so much.
She doesn't follow along with the rest of the show.
Did you watch some Tonys?
I did do some Tonys, but I didn't do all of them.
Damn it.
What's your favorite Tony? Is it still Crimson Tide?
Still Crimson Tide.
Did you watch Man on Fire?
I've seen Man on Fire before, but I didn't rewatch it. I
Should
need to
watch that
watch
with-
that and Unstoppable.
You should watch that with your dad on his soundbar.
What if there was a train?
For everyone out there that doesn't know, Sophia's dad, who's the best,
God.
who's just the best guy. He has a
It'll be on the
soundbar.
pod next week.
He has a soundbar in what the basement?
It's in
your
the
parents'
basement, and you can hear it from
the third floor.
the third floor.
Yeah,
Yes.
or the second
Damn.
floor, but like that's
Yeah,
from the yeah. Anyway, 2 floors up.
Imagine
can
if you
hear it.
watched Tenet.
No, he watches Oppenheimer
Don't
all
give
the time.
idea. Don't.
He watches Oppie all the time on it, and it drives your mom nuts, right?
Can I give you a hot take? I
Yeah.
think the Tenet score is better than the Oppenheimer score. Is
Can I
that
give you a hot take? They're both great.
I love
They
the
are,
Oppenheimer
but I
score
prefer
more.
the Tenet score.
I like them both. Ludwig and Nolan, that's better than Zimmer. Work with that.
Well, yeah.
Though I will say the Interstellar score is phenomenal. And
I
Morricone's
do like
score
Interstellar.
is phenomenal in Days of Heaven.
Oh yeah,
Um,
my favorite piece of music in this, really quickly, is called "Carnival of the Animals."
Yeah,
which
the beginning and
Morricone
ending
takes.
song.
It's
Yeah.
so beautiful. Played
Well,
before
it's
every
from
movie at
Carnival
the
of the
Cannes Film
Animals.
Festival. Yes, but that's that's like what the theme is called, and then it's called something like that. It's a longer title, but he inverted it or something. He like changed it up a little bit.
Wait, what about the can?
He pulled a
This one.
Tenet. It was a temporal pincer movement in some
God's
ways.
sake, for God's sake.
At Cannes, Ryan, when you go, before every single movie, they play that song for the Cannes intro, and
God,
it
I
is
love
so
it.
beautiful.
Can't wait to experience that.
That
actually.
particular song is called Aquarium from the Carnival of the Animals, which is a musical
Aquarium.
suite for
Aquarius?
1922.
Aquarius.
Malick is a Sagittarius, which I found shocking.
Interesting. What's Jay?
You're telling
Jay?
me. I'm a
You know what you are?
Taurus.
You're a Taurus. I
Yeah.
wouldn't have thought he knew that.
I definitely know that. I don't know the other ones, like the sub.
Like
Oh,
the
you don't
moon
know
and
the
the
moon,
rising.
Yeah.
the stars and the moon. all
Let
that
me
other
know.
stuff.
I'll read your birth chart for you.
Yeah, she'll do
Okay.
it.
Please do.
She'll
It sounds
do
like a good bonus episode.
Over a couple of martinis, Sophia will tell you your whole life. Jay,
Yeah.
how you doing?
I'm doing great, man. I'm floating on a cloud. This is just a good time.
That's good, buddy. Before we get out of here, we're going to test your award season knowledge based on the film we just reviewed, which is Days in Heaven. In a segment we like to call "It's an Honor to Get Nominated."
So to be
Jay,
clear, that was a parody of a song about a man's son dying, correct?
yeah,
Okay,
And-
got it. No, let's continue.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It's a good song.
It is a good song. It makes that song.
Well, you were
gets me
supposed
some
to
type of
sing
way.
on these episodes, and you don't sing anymore, so I had to come up with something.
Everything
Um,
changed with this series in particular.
Yeah,
I'm telling you, I'm a very serious person.
he
man.
was going to do songs and everything because of the last time you were on Sophia, and he did Seal, and he has not done a single song. So I just pulled
Yes,
out.
I have. I've done one since then, I think.
That song has not been the same since that episode. I will hear it in a Dwayne Reed or Target or something, and I just
I
laugh.
I was at a Target and I heard it, and I had to stop. I had to leave. I had to freaking leave. Jay, Days of Heaven, nominated for any Oscars?
I know that it won one Oscar, which was cinematography, which
That's
is well earned.
That's correct.
I if it got nominated for cinematography, I assume it surely it got nominated. You know what? I'm gonna say it didn't get nominated for production design, just because you guys said that Fisk has gotten spurned by the Academy.
That's correct. I mean, it's not that he hasn't got nominated before. He just
Right,
hasn't
but in this
won.
particular instance, I'm just assuming he didn't because he was very
Yes,
young.
yes, he did not get nominated. That is correct. But do you want to keep going?
I do want to keep going, but I'm assuming I'm just gonna guess that's the only one.
So you think it only got the one and one?
I'm guessing it got the one of one.
You're a little rusty.
Oh man.
It got
Hold on, let me
nominated.
guess then. Hold on,
Okay.
hold on.
No, you can't guess. You gave up.
No,
What's
no,
a
no,
really
no, no,
big
no, no,
thing
no,
that
no.
we talked about? A
Yeah,
person
what's
who's a legend.
A person who's a legend.
Yeah, we literally just one of the final.
Terrence
Just talked about
Malick.
him.
Yeah, we literally just
No,
said
Literally just Seal?
no.
close in a way.
So Jay, when you were comparing the Tenet and Oppenheimer, what?
Score.
There you go. So original score.
Oh, Morricone. Of
Yeah,
course.
of course.
Of
There you go.
course. Okay. All right.
And then
I wonder do you think today that would be eligible because of the opening and closing song or
I
stripped
mean,
If the
from
it would
percentage
be
is high
something
enough.
else?
it would be because I think it's like the threshold is what, Sophia, 85% original music,
I don't
or they
remember.
lowered it, right? It's like now like
Yeah.
75 because now like I
Yeah.
think
Even like Williams when he gets nominated for all those like
Star Wars movies and Indiana
recycled
Jones.
Star
Borrowing
Wars
from
and
himself.
Indiana Jones.
But
Yeah.
but also too like I remember when the rules changed recently, it was set that like the Fury Road and the There Will Be Blood scores would be eligible finally.
Oh
But they
my
weren't at
God,
the
that There Will Be
times.
Blood score.
Jay, I'm just gonna tell you. Costume design
Good.
and best sound. Come on, it's a
Good.
Malick movie. Best sound.
Yeah. Good. Good.
Those are like chalk ones to go up with.
Yeah. Song to song got like sound, of course. I'm sure that got like half a dozen nominations. We'll get there.
We'll get there. Best picture this year was The Deer Hunter.
I like this movie way more than The Deer Hunter.
Coming Home, Heaven Can Wait, Midnight Express, An Unmarried Woman. If we were playing our game, our AwardsWatch game, if we could get rid of 3,
I'd kick them all out.
No,
We
I
just
keep
have
an
one
unmarried
nominee.
woman. An unmarried woman should be
I haven't
there.
seen it.
Okay,
That's the
I would
one
keep.
haven't seen.
Yeah, I would keep An Unmarried Woman. That's a good movie. And
Is that about an unmarried woman?
correct?
She was married at the beginning.
Interesting. Oh, interesting. What a twist.
What do we think of Coming Home? Is that like a relic of its time, or?
I like it more than The Deer Hunter.
Yes,
I
feel
like it
they're the
less than
same.
The Deer Hunter, but
I'm not a Deer Hunter fan.
I'm not either, but it's got stuff.
It's got
I
scenes.
like Heaven
It's got
Can
walking.
Wait a lot.
Yeah.
I like, yeah. Warren Beatty, good at his job.
I love Warren Beatty. I'd probably, yeah. I mean,
I've
The
never
Days of
seen Midnight
Heaven
Express.
Are better
I've never seen it.
than.
Have you guys seen Midnight Express?
Mhm.
I've seen
Oh,
Midnight
that's-
Express.
oh,
What is
I would kick it out.
Okay.
I'm trying to look
Woody
at what
Allen
I'm gonna look at what
Interiors.
other movies are from 1978.
Best Actress is great this year. When Jane Fonda won for Coming Home, but you have Ingrid Bergman for Autumn Sonata, Ellen Burstyn same time next year, Jill Clayburgh, An Unmarried Woman, and Geraldine Page for Interiors.
I would nominate.
Speaking of Schrader, Blue Collar came out this year.
Blue Collar's
That movie
good.
rocks.
That movie rocks.
Mhm.
Yeah, I would totally nominate Days of Heaven and director and picture. That's
Yeah.
like, and I would kick out The Deer Hunter and Heartbeat. That movie's so goddamn long too, and we spent so much
Endless.
time at that wedding. It feels endless.
Mhm.
Walken's
Man,
good.
that movie is. I do not remember that movie being over 3 hours long, but it sure is.
What, The Deer Hunter? You remember that?
I remember it being long. I don't remember it being 3 hours long.
It's like
This
two
is
and a half.
not a great Oscar year.
No, actually,
it's
this year in general kind of stinks.
Yeah, it's a stink year. Why don't we just give everything to Days of Heaven? Call it a day.
Yeah.
Sounds good to me.
Sounds good to me. Nominate Gear.
And this year, Malick won director at Cannes.
Oh, wait a minute. Stop the presses. I know what movie should win over Days of Heaven and everything else. The Wiz. Easily.
The Wiz. Star Wars Holiday Special.
Stop.
I could
This year
resist.
really does kind of stink.
It's always great to like Sophia's like on the edge of her seat and
like,
she
oh,
never
I like-
knows.
I wanna,
She
I like
never
I
knows
wanna
am I going to be
man.
serious or not. It's
Zemeckis'
great.
first movie. I like that movie.
Which one?
I Want to Hold Your Hand.
Oh, that is a good movie.
That's a good movie.
Have you
Are
seen
you
I
ready
Wanna
for
Hold You?
here?
Oh, God.
Oh my God. Let me tell you,
No. I'm trying to do it. Oh my God.
get legitimately excited about interesting looking Zemeckis stuff. And I know it's going to be terrible, but I can't wait.
God damn it, Jay. Don't do this.
I can't wait.
Don't be this person. You're better
I'm calling
than
it
this.
right now. I'm reviewing that one for AwardsWatch. Give me that assignment.
If it doesn't go to a festival, it is all yours.
All yours.
All yours. But knowing my luck, it's going to go to a festival and I'm going to be the one that has to do it.
No,
And I'm going to be so angry. Sophia knows how angry I am. I don't understand why that camera has to be set in the middle in a freaking corner. It's so stupid. It's so stupid. Oh
Ryan,
my God.
Take your cell phone out, record the screening. I'll review it.
Okay.
Oh.
Just get so angry with it. It is my villain. That trailer, I saw it in front of Horizon.
I'm not kidding. I
Part
saw the
1.
trailer and I was like, maybe.
You are my dad. You are a dad now because my dad and we saw Horizon together and he looked at me and he went, "What's that?" Like
Yeah.
it was super
Look,
curious.
It's got a hook.
My dad just responded when I texted it to him and just said, "Looks interesting."
God damn
Hell
it.
yeah.
See, I think it's a dad thing.
God, you know,
But then he's going to
all of a
say
sudden
that
all of a sudden you got a son, and Forrest Gump is a definitive text.
is Zemeckis
I don't like Forrest Gump.
Zemeckis is in the wheelhouse, right,
I
of the
kinda
directors
like
that
Forrest Gump.
you have to be a fan of or love or like a lot of his movies to still be interested after the piles of crap that he's given. Like,
No, but I don't even know that I do. He's just I don't even know.
like, is this thing with Zemeckis? Is this like my thing with Shyamalan?
I'm a guy. Well, no,
we
Shyamalan's
give-
actually doing like legitimately interesting stuff. I'm a
Yeah.
guy who is a Welcome to Marwen. Like that's an interesting movie.
So is it like
Guy.
is it kind of then like Tim Burton where you want him to get back to those former days of glory? And so you hope and pray that the next thing is going to be good
Yeah, I guess so.
because you know that
I-
person can make good movies and they have the ability to do that. They just haven't.
You look at Zemeckis' 80s and 90s, not only are there a good amount of good movies, he's got a really diverse filmography.
Well,
Where he's
Robert's
not afraid to take swings. And I
Well,
kind of appreciate that.
as we all know,
And then he got lost in the motion capture
Yeah, and that's the thing.
abyss.
I think it's kind of fascinating that, like, Zemeckis, he really picked up the Terrence Malick torch after Malick retired.
Yeah, he is sort of like Terrence Malick.
And
in
then
a
he
lot of ways.
started going downhill when Malick returned after Thin Red Line because he wins his Oscars and everything, and it's kind of downhill after that. Totally.
Yeah,
kidding.
Malick saw I Want to Hold Your Hand and was like, can't top
Oh
it. I'm
shit, I
done.
can't do that anymore. He's got people holding hands. I can't even top
I'll never.
that.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. Sophia, thoughts on here? And are you a Zemeckis head?
I am not.
Okay.
I would say I actively dislike a lot of his stuff.
Oh, I agree. He's made
Sophia,
some
do you have a
absolute
director
trash.
that's like that? I guess that where you're like, even though you like a lot of their stuff, they haven't made a bunch of good things recently, but you instill a lot of hope in
No, I don't even think that's Zemeckis for me. That's not Zemeckis for me.
that is Zemeckis for you and others.
No,
But
I
that's
really
what
don't think
most
so.
people. Why do you keep going back to the Zemeckis? Well, even if you say something's interesting, he's going to deliver piles of shit. He literally delivered a pile of shit with Pinocchio.
I mean,
in it,
Pinocchio
literally.
is one of the worst movies of the last 5 years.
And yet
I have an
everyone's like,
answer, but I can't
oh,
share
okay.
it.
Oh, say it.
Oh, you know who it is for me? I know who it is.
Is it Darren Aronofsky for you? No,
No.
I'm just kidding.
Mine's Guy Ritchie. I'm a Guy Ritchie.
Oh, but Guy Ritchie makes good movies.
I'm a Guy Ritchie.
Savant.
I'm a dude guy. I'm a Guy Ritchie guy.
Okay,
But he also makes trash.
that's fair.
And a lot of people just hate him
Yeah,
because he is a Tarantino knockoff.
yeah. But
I
he's
don't like him because he stole Madonna's money.
Jesus.
Damn.
She's doing fine, by the way.
I know.
She's never recovered.
She's doing
great. If
She's
actually anyone
really
needed it, it
knocking
was
that tour
it
out of
was
the
Guy
park.
Ritchie. To be fair, I feel like
Yeah.
Guy Ritchie's living in a pub somewhere in London.
Mhm.
While Madonna's a superstar. Yeah, mine's Shyamalan. I feel like
Yeah, he's
I
had a
got-
little bit of a resurgence.
I got a soft spot for the guy. I also feel like too, there's this. There is a nastiness that is behind people hating on. I'm not saying I Sophia, I know you're not a big fan of his, but I know you're not like
Mhm.
this. There is a sort of just like rooting for someone to fail. And he definitely has had that. It's because of massive expectations in his career. That's why I've always been so worried about someone like Jordan Peele, because I felt like that similar trajectory in their careers of ascending so high early on, and people and audiences putting these massive expectations. But M. Night's reinvented himself and is kind of now, he is a very reliable.
He's making elevated schlock.
Yeah.
Which is good.
You know who I have a couple, but you know who I think of?
No.
I don't know if this
Polanski.
counts. It was gonna be Woody Allen, but not really.
Honestly, fair.
Like-
No.
I mean, if I think about like the decline, like I love so much of his old stuff, like so deeply.
Yeah.
I know that's bad, but his music, it's just, and I try them all. Like I don't pay for them, but if I find a way to watch them, like if they're,
like the new one?
subscription or something.
No, I
like
mean,
watched
like,
the new one on a plane.
listen, I listen. When I saw
And it was
Midnight, I saw
okay.
Midnight in Paris in 2011, it was one of my
Mhm.
favorite films. It still is one of my favorite films of that year. And
I don't like
I-
that movie.
okay.
Oh my God, I love it.
And I was sitting there and I was just like, oh my God, he's kind of like returned to form. And then he had Blue Jasmine. I was like, oh, interesting. And he's never kind of hit back, but it made me then. I mean, it was appointment to, and yes, he's a terrible human being, but who gives a shit? If you make good
Like
movies,
Annie
it doesn't
Hall,
matter.
perfect movie.
Yeah,
Hannah and her
I'm not-
sisters, perfect movie.
there are a
And
lot of
then
people.
we
There are a lot of
have
people that are
A
bad.
Rainy Day in New York.
Oh my God, a movie that like literally Timothy Chalamet has been trying to hide for the last like 5 years or
Mhm.
whatever of his career, so he
Yeah.
didn't have to talk about it.
Mhm.
But yeah, no,
Yeah.
Terry.
And Damien Chazelle, I have a soft spot for, as you know.
Yes, I think the internet has a very
No, I don't
big
know
soft
that.
spot
I don't
for
know.
it.
I don't know that counts. But
You don't know if that counts?
it doesn't count as like a guilty pleasure. Or
I think no, I do
I
think
defend him though. If I'm thinking of like someone I defend who people love to hate,
I
he's one
think
of
yeah, I
them.
think listen, I go back and forth on Chazelle. I genuinely hope that his next movie is not as Babylon-y as Babylon was, but I do love First Man, and I really like Whiplash, and La La Land is what it is, but I don't hate the man. I think he's good at his job. I just there's just some
Mhm.
movies that I don't like in others, but there are, it seems like, people that plant their flags in certain ways about him where it's like
Yeah.
he's the greatest director ever, and then it's like no, he is Satan, and so
Yeah,
like
it's like the opposite ends.
yeah, and
of
there
the
was a lot
spectrum.
of rooting for Babylon to fail, and I don't think that that's good, because if Babylon fails, they don't make movies like that anymore.
Who directed
They-
Book Club? That's mine.
You know, a lot of people were watching that on the plane on my way back. and I
That's
did
fair.
think about putting it
Of
on.
course they are. It's a great
Um,
film.
it's a great film. Did the director of
There's a
Book Club make
Werner
Book Club
Herzog
2?
joke in that movie.
I don't think so.
The guy that
I
made
don't
Book
think
Club
it's the
make
same
Book Club 2?
director.
You know
No.
what? We're gonna check it out.
We're gonna check it out right now.
Ryan, vamp for a
I'm
minute.
gonna
Actually,
vamp for a
yeah,
second.
Bill Holderman
Bill
did
Holderman.
both.
Wow.
What has he
Bill
done other than
Holderman.
the Book Club movies, Sophia?
Absolutely nothing.
Nothing.
Good for him.
But he produced one of our favorites, Ryan, The Old Man and the Gun.
Mhm.
Freaking love that movie. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh, Lowry, one of my
You know what you
guys.
could call the book club movies? The old ladies in the book.
Oh, for God's sakes. All right. Shit. Well, Malick goes away for 20 years, so I guess this podcast is going away for 20 years now. Since we're getting real meta. No, we'll be back next week. But Sophia, thank you coming on. Thank you for coming on. I don't know how to speak now after Jay's terrible joke.
I love that I could get silly back at the end there. I got so serious for a while.
Yeah.
I was really just caught up
You
in
had to let it
the
out.
idea of
It's just
being,
like I gotta, yeah, you can it felt like you were not yourself there, Jay, but it's okay. Be silly. Sophia, can you tell everybody where they can find you and all your work? And if you don't mind, you know the drill, movie recommendation of the week for everybody out there.
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter at Sophia_Sim, letterboxed at Faye Dunaway. You can find my podcast, Oscar Wilde, wherever you find podcasts. And you can find my reviews, interviews, and more podcasts at AwardsWatch. My weekly recommendation, I'm not going to go with the Faye documentary, as
Okay.
timely as it is.
Don't do that.
But I recently, when I was in London, La Chimera was still playing in theaters there, and I decided to go see it again. And I was even more moved by it this time around on rewatch. This is the Alice Rohrwacher film from last year from festivals, and it got released this year, starring Josh O'Connor. It is just a gorgeous, deeply sad, emotional, but beautiful film. And it brings in a lot of magical realism. Highly recommend it to anyone who hasn't seen it, or if you have, recommend a rewatch.
All right. J-Dog?
yeah, any writing I'm doing, find it at AwardsWatch, Letterbox, J Ledbetter, Twitter at Mr. J Ledbetter. Recommendation of the week. So I'm sort of doing like an anti-recommendation. I've watched a lot of great stuff lately. I watched a film called The Godfather. I watched a film called
Wait. Can you tell the listeners, because and this doesn't count as your recommendation, Jay, but I think it's a great story. Can you tell about your experience watching The Godfather Part 1 this past weekend?
Oh, this was an incredibly romantic tale.
Yeah.
So every now and then I'll just bring up a stack of like 12 movies from my Blu-ray shelf.
I do the same thing.
And I'm like to my wife, hey, pick one.
One
Here are your options. You pick one. And it's like, Crank 2, Indiana Jones, and The Godfather, right? I'm like, I'm really trying to appeal to her sensibilities.
Underworld,
but
things like that.
And in this stack was my Godfather 4K box set. And she looks at that and she says, I have never seen a Godfather film. Can we, over the next 3 weeks, watch the 3 Godfathers? And I said, yes, with an asterisk. We will watch the 3 Godfather theatrical cuts, and then we will watch the Godfather 3 other cut. What is that one called?
The Death of
Coda.
Michael Corleone.
Yeah, we'll watch that one. And,
we'll watch Coda. You're gonna watch Coda. That's right. There you go.
I love Coda. and we watched The Godfather, and she really dug it. She honestly,
she really liked a movie called The Godfather.
She loved. Hold on, let me get that correct. The Godfather. She loved it.
God.
And which is interesting because you do watch The Godfather. It is not paced like a contemporary movie whatsoever. And she is generally, I would say, averse to films made over 25 years ago for the most part. There are some exceptions. She loves The Graduate. Obviously, she loves like stuff like Silence of the Lambs and some other stuff, but this one I really didn't know how she would react, and it was awesome. But my real recommendation, and again, it's an anti-recommendation. I watched it for the first time. I think everyone who loves movies should watch Gigli. I really think they should. Because it really is sort of a testament to how hard it is to make movies.
A good movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is so bad. Unbelievably bad.
Ultimate
And it's
Thanksgiving
made by
movie?
a director who has made some very good movies. But
Yeah.
it is really one of those things that feels like it should be illegal.
Yeah. It's
And
so bad.
Justin Bartha should be in jail for life for his performance. I can't believe he ever got another role after that. And it gave us, it was one of the most important parts of the Bennifer saga, which of course had a second. It had, much like Horizon, it had a part 2.
It has a part 2.
And
we're living in it.
then, much like Horizon, it ended after part 2. And now it's over.
It's not over. They're still together.
No, they're not. They're done. Right?
They're breaking up.
Are they breaking up?
It's in motion.
God, you know what? Time of this recording,
sort of
if they like double
situation.
down on things. Wow. Okay. Well,
Gobble.
Well, this is
Turkey time.
Turkey time.
Well, it is funny because one, I know you're watching that because
I'm not going to get into that, but there's so many questions about
but
that.
Blake Check is covering that obviously on their series.
That's why I watched it.
But it is interesting because I feel like over the past 5 to 10 years, movies that we kind of grew up with, even schlocky things like that have been reevaluated by podcast or by critics because, most of them grew up with these movies and it's 15 year anniversaries and people do the think pieces or they do director dives or whatever the case may be. This is the premium case where I saw so many people on Letterboxd that are obviously friends of ours and Jay and everybody else that were watching it because of the series that Griffin and David were doing over at Blank Check, and a collective 1 to 1.5 to probably, if you could give it 0 stars,
I gave it a half. I gave it
would have existed.
The lowest it can go.
It's the lowest you can go.
I
is
think
the half.
I've given 20 movies I've ever watched a half star, and that is one of them.
Ooh, that would be a good main show thing
series.
to talk about, our 5 worst movies of all time. That actually would be a lot of fun. Or worst theatrical experiences. Maybe that would be a fun episode.
Climax.
Oh yeah, Jay and I hated
Climax.
Climax.
I hate that movie. That's a half-star movie for me.
That is that's one
that's a half star for me.
Yeah, Men.
I remember
when I look at my Letterboxd, like my friends on Letterboxd, I have 2 other friends who've given it half a star, and it's both of you.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's the friend you make along the way, folks.
What a duo. I remember seeing Climax, and the movie theater attendant walked in as I was leaving and was just like, "So how was it?" And I was like, man, that was one of the worst. Like, I've never had 2 hours I resent as much as the ones I just spent. And he was like, "Okay, see you later."
Wait, I'm laughing so hard at the first sentence of your Letterboxd review for this movie.
Say it.
It was weird. After 3 hours, there were still 45 minutes left in this 94-minute movie.
Which one is that for?
For Climax.
Oh.
Jay, sometimes I go back to your old reviews on Letterboxd, and they're the funniest things ever.
Oh my god!
I'm telling you, if listeners out there, if you want a great Letterboxd thread of reviews and reactions, look up the film Hocus Pocus and read Jay's reactions every year to when it does. It's the best thing. I read that at least once every 6 months.
Well, get ready. It's getting close to October.
We're getting the spooky times.
It's coming.
Yeah,
I went to like a wine and paint thing where we painted Hocus Pocus.
No shit.
I painted.
You didn't tell me that. Why did you tell me that?
Hocus Pocus on canvas.
And yet it was yet you've done that and yet she just now saw The Godfather. Like I would have been like,
Oh,
after like
Ryan, I put her through so much more than watching Hocus Pocus 4 times
what
in
have you
October.
what have you done that's like probably the worst like what's the most J movie? Sorry, I know we're trying to end this episode, but
Well, I watched The
what,
Tree of Life like every 3 months.
okay.
But the Tree of Life isn't painting Hocus Pocus on
That
canvas.
was a
Yeah,
great time. There was
you're not
wine.
making her paint trees in your house. You know what I
Excuse
mean?
me.
You give me wine. I'll watch Climax again. That's not true. I wouldn't
That's
do
not
that.
true. I know that for a fact. That's not true. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd at Ryan McQuade 77. You can find all my work at awardswatch.com.
I was at a restaurant last week.
No,
and
no, we're not doing.
It was a steak restaurant. It was a nice restaurant, but not like crazy nice. And the guy was just like, "Oh, we have this wine. It's a fantastic wine." And I was like, "And how much does that wine cost?" "Oh, $225. Get out of here. Are you kidding me? $225 for a bottle of wine?"
If you like other podcasts, we release the main show
That wine
on
better
Mondays.
tell me how handsome I am. If I'm paying $225
This is released
for it.
on Thursdays. 5 stars on iTunes, Spotify.
Unbelievable.
While you're over on the websites, please sign up for the newsletter. It's the best place to get all of our news, reviews, interviews, and podcasts. And crazy shit, evidently, we do on this show all in one place. My Letterboxd recommendation is a movie that I'm going to bring it down a little bit. I'm sorry, guys. But we haven't done a show.
You're gonna bring it down from Geely?
Well, no,
we really have a good spread.
no, not like a
those
bat.
two.
No. I'm trying to be a little bit serious here. And Sophia, I think also can talk about this movie as well too. We recently, a couple of weeks ago, we had the passing of a great actress, Shelley Duvall, and I then took the liberty of watching one of her greatest films. I rewatched Robert Altman's Popeye, which is an incredible film and one that has pitch perfect casting.
Speak on it, but not Jay, who also loves it.
Well,
I watched it for the first time though, and I realized I haven't logged in on Letterboxd because I'm still writing the review in my notes app.
Wow. It is, I mean, I think a perfect piece of nostalgia. And I think in terms of when you think about people destined to be roles, she was destined for that movie. And so was Williams. And I think that they are incredible together. And
she was immortalized in Punch Drunk Love.
Yes. And
second greatest live action cartoon ever.
Yes. Well, Speed Racer.
Speed Racer.
Okay, thank you very much.
You got to get
that Popeye's first.
I love them both. I love them both equally, and I'm not going Garfield to start a
Tale of Two Kitties count?
Sophia, that was your last.
There's two
Altman.
My final Altman, and I thought it was a masterpiece.
Yeah,
but your last Altman. What does that mean?
She had not
saving it.
She was saving it. She had seen every Robert Altman movie except
Popeye.
That one.
Every one?
I think so.
You're like me. The one I haven't seen is Health.
Oh, I haven't seen Health actually either.
Oh,
let me look.
Then you guys got some.
Then it's not my last Altman. There are a couple that are hard to find.
They are. If you want them, hit me up.
We don't. And this podcast does not condone any torrenting or any pirating of anything whatsoever.
Have you seen Quintet?
I have seen Quintet.
Truly a wild movie.
Wild, yes.
What if you put Vaseline around the lens? Is the question that movie asks.
But no, I mean, it's a beautiful movie. And I know that when we had Robert on and we were talking about Punch Drunk Love, and we did.
Oh, sorry.
When we had Robert Altman on?
No, when we had Robert Daniels on to talk about Punch Drunk Love.
I loved when we had the ghost of Robert Altman on the episode. He was such a good guest.
He was such a good guy. No, I just remember one getting a little bit of shit from both of you guys about it being upper tier.
It's not. It Altman, was when we did our Altman watch through. It was your favorite Robert Altman movie, which is insane.
It was wonderful. I don't know what to tell you. And now, I mean, obviously that's changed, and obviously the correct answer is McCabe Miss Miller. But Yeah,
Three
Popeye's,
women for me. Speaking of Shelley Duvall.
yes.
Shortcuts.
But
Oh,
but yeah, there's something about Popeye. It's truly, I think, one of the best films that understands how to use nostalgia the correct way, in an innocently tender way, rather than the crap that we get most of the time now, which feels very insincere and driven by profits.
that is a very sincere movie for sure. It
Yeah.
lost a lot of money. You can still go to the set.
I want to go to the set so bad, Jay.
Yeah.
Jay, would you go to the set with me? Would you take a trip and we go to the set?
Yeah, we go see Robin Williams.
Oh, for God's sakes. Would we do a live? Could we do a live podcast from the set? You think they let us
I
do
need you
that?
to cut that Robin Williams thing out. That was terrible.
I'm keeping it in. Anyway, that's going to do it for this stupid episode that we've been doing over the last 2 hours. It really derailed.
I was so in control
so
that I,
good.
He
that
was
I
so
like,
good,
I got
wasn't he?
I got
Yeah.
Oh my God.
uncorked. It was
Oh
like I
my
was
gosh.
shaking the champagne bottle all episode, and then we let the cork off and
Turned into full KG. Anything
yeah,
is possible.
yeah. I recommended
All right.
Geely.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Well, you
So-
hate recommended Julie, to be fair.
Mhm.
It's an anti-recommendation, but everyone should watch it.
Yes. We will be back next week. We will be talking about The Thin Red Line. So, psych, we're not going to take 20 years off. We'll be back next week. Thank you all so much for listening, and we'll see you all next time.